Chapter 1640. Yin Guicheng had just started to build his foundation and had yet to finish. Fairy Hong Xia had also started to build her foundation, and her momentum was more than 3 times greater than Yin Guicheng's. Needless to say, her cultivation was definitely more than 3 times greater than Yin Guicheng's. All the disciples were dumbfounded. What is this? A burly cultivator almost scolded. It's fine if you don't build your foundation, but there are 2 of you at the same time. Senior brother and junior sister. Can't you build your foundation in your own cave abode? Why did you come to the Feather Immortal Assembly for no reason? Not only did you snatch the first place in a magic weapon, but you also made others jealous? Junior sister. So, you could have built your foundation long ago? Yin Guicheng was dejected and said, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Fairy Hong Xia's aura gradually increased, and the amount of spiritual energy she absorbed was much more than Yin Guicheng's. Hearing Yin Guicheng's question, she replied calmly, "Senior brother, you could have built your foundation long ago too, right? I don't seem to know either." Quick, Yin Guicheng, you can't build your foundation together with your junior sister. Her cultivation is deeper than yours, and the spiritual energy she absorbs will definitely affect your foundation. It might even cause all your previous efforts to be wasted. Xiong Fei suddenly shouted. Yin Guicheng's heart trembled, and he no longer cared about the sword embryo and Xiaohua. He flew up and said loudly, "I give up this round. Senior Renju, please guide me." "All right, please." Renju flew up and brought Yin Guicheng out of the square, flying towards the outside of the Bright Realm. "Hongxiao, my little friend, come with me." Deming flew out from the pavilion outside the square, stood in midair, and shouted with a low voice, "Thank you, Senior." Fairy Hong Xia bowed and flew up. Before she left, she turned around and smiled. "My dear Xiao, now that I'm the only one left, this sword embryo belongs to you." Fairy Hong Xia's smile was full of affection. Her smile was like the most powerful imprisonment spell in the world, firmly imprisoning Xiaohua in midair. He stared blankly at Fairy Hong Xia's figure flying out of the Bright Realm and disappearing in another direction. "Since you have made up your mind, I will share it with you." Perhaps Xiaohua was the only one who heard these words. Xiaohua thought about these words countless times, and his heart was filled with incomparable joy. It was as if there was a voice that wanted to shout out, "Concubine, concubine." She actually called herself concubine in front of me. Furthermore, he didn't hesitate to fall out with that white-faced cloud for me. And you're still calling me husband, Xiao." Xiaohua was really overjoyed. Calling herself concubine was actually nothing, but in his eyes, it was different. Of course, Fairy Hong Xia's smile and attitude showed that there was nothing between her and Yin Guicheng. Everything was just Yin Guicheng's wishful thinking. As for Xiaohua, was it to repay Xiaohua's previous favor, or was there another meaning behind it? Would Xiaohua have any other thoughts right now? After Deming and Renju left, Xiaohua stood blankly in midair. The cloud-suppressing seal, which was like a small mountain, was suspended high up in the sky. Although the cloud-suppressing seal was already severely damaged, a magic treasure was still a magic treasure. Its swift and fierce aura, and its atmosphere was filled with spiritual energy. It was simply not something that an artifact could compare to. The disciples present began to whisper at this moment. Jin Qing, Jin Yu, Qin Mo, Li Xiao, and the others also had complicated looks in their eyes. They knew that Xiaohua's cultivation had improved greatly, but they never thought that this improvement would be so great. It was really beyond their expectations. It was actually more powerful than the champion of the Feather Immortal Gathering. It was to the extent that a cultivator who was at the peak of the Qi refining stage had to use the divine accumulation talisman to resist. They even saw with their own eyes that even Yin Guicheng, who was at the foundation establishment stage, was still unable to stop Xiaohua. Xiaohua still had to fight against Yin Guicheng. What did this mean? It meant that Xiaohua was not stingy with Yin Guicheng, who was at the foundation establishment stage. Could it be that Xiao Hua is more powerful than a foundation establishment cultivator? Everyone had this thought. However, it was clear that Xiao Hua could not do anything to resist Yun Guicheng's pressure, nor did he do anything shocking. However, everyone seemed to see from Xiao Hua's calm expression that he had a card up his sleeve. What if Fairy Hong Xia did not build her foundation? How would Xiao Hua deal with it? This was the unanimous thought of everyone. But reality was reality. Fairy Hong Xia was facing her own senior brother who was at the foundation establishment stage. She had also built her foundation. She was willing to bear the possible punishment from the Huanhua sect to help Xiao Hua. What kind of affection was this? For a moment, everyone had a strange thought. Could it be that Fairy Hong Xia's foundation establishment was something that Yun Jiecheng, who was her senior martial brother, didn't know, but a disciple from another sect did? Then, what is the relationship between Xiao Hua and Fairy Hong Xia? For a moment, envy, jealousy, resentment, and so on were all cast on Xiao Hua. Among these gazes, there was a slight resentment. Sigh, I really did not expect his cultivation to be so high. He and Fairy Hong Xia, who is as beautiful as a fairy, are. That she had mixed feelings. I thought it was only my junior sister. Moments later, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and pointed a finger at the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal spun in the air and gradually shrank in size, flying in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and the cloud-suppressing seal disappeared into his mouth. This was the difference between a magic treasure and a magic weapon. Magic weapons could not be kept in the body and could only be kept in a storage bag, but magic treasures could be kept in the body. Of course, the place where Xiao Hua stored the cloud-suppressing seal in his body was different. It was the same as the place where he nurtured and repaired the sword pill. It was also the Buddha heart of the Buddha outside his Naiwan palace. This was also the result of a flash of inspiration after Xiao Hua tried to store the cloud-suppressing seal in his meridians and corporeal body to no avail. At this moment, the huge incense in the air had already disappeared, and the Great Wisdom Sword was stuck on the high platform. Xiao Hua looked at Great Wisdom with a gentle gaze, then raised his head to look at the Golden Core cultivators. Seeing this, Jin Qing transmitted her voice, Xiao Hua, wait a moment. As she was speaking, a person flew out from the Tai Ching sect disciples. He was also in the late stage of the foundation establishment realm. He cupped his hands and said to everyone, Martial Uncle Deming and Martial Uncle Renju, I did not expect that someone would build his foundation at the last moment of the Feather Immortal Assembly. Furthermore, it was two fellow Taoists, so please wait a moment. After that cultivator finished speaking, he retreated into the crowd. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Renju flew back, followed by Deming. Renju glanced at Deming, then flew in front of Xiao Hua and sized him up. Her gaze was somewhat complicated, and she raised her voice. Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Yes, I am Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua said respectfully. Haha, I think you are the disciple with the lowest realm participating in this Feather Immortal Assembly, right? Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with a smile, It seems so. According to what I know, not only are you the disciple with the lowest realm participating in this Feather Immortal Assembly, but you are also the disciple with the lowest realm participating in this Feather Immortal Assembly. As Renju spoke, she glanced at Jin Qing and asked, I have a question to ask, but I don't know if you can answer me truthfully. Of course I can. Senior, please ask. Your cultivation should be the strongest among all the disciples. Why did you lose to the other disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Xiao Hua said with a smile, Senior, you are inferior. How am I the strongest? Not to mention Senior Martial Brother Yun of the Huanhua sect, I am not even a match for Senior Martial Brother Zhua of the Xuanyin school. I only dared to fight against Senior Martial Brother Yun because I had just refined this magic treasure. Senior Martial Brother Yun probably disdained to fight with me over the sword embryo because he wanted to build his foundation, right? Huh. Renju didn't ask any more questions. He had only sent Yun Jicheng out to build his foundation for a short while. so he naturally had other things to do in the time it took to drink a cup of tea. She already knew a lot about Xiao Hua's performance in the Feather Immortal Assembly, so she didn't expose him. She pointed with her finger and said, "The sword embryo that fell from the sky is already yours. However, as I said just now, you must have the ability to take it away before it is yours." Xiao Hua frowned and bowed. "Senior, what do you mean?" Renju said with a smile. "There's a restriction set up by the elders of the Taiching sect within 3 feet of the sword embryo. All the magic power is restricted. All the disciples who want to take this sword embryo have to use their own strength to pull it out. Only then can it be said that they have the ability to control the sword embryo. It can be said that they are fated with the sword embryo." Huh? Xiao Hua didn't say anything, but all the cultivators in the square were in an uproar. Renju had already said just now that the sword embryo was heavier than a demonic tool. Looking at the size of the sword embryo, all the cultivators in the square, including the Foundation establishment and Golden Core cultivators who led the group, shook their heads and their hearts. They understood that it was absolutely impossible for them to pick up the sword embryo with their physical strength. This sword embryo probably couldn't be taken out of the Bright Realm. And the last battle of the Feather Immortal Assembly was probably a trick for the Taiching sect to show off. Seeing Xiao Hua's expression that was as calm as water, Renju suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. In the distance, Deming also had a bad premonition. Sure enough, Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Then this junior will go forward and give it a try." "Xiao Hua, let me tell you clearly. You only have one chance. If you can't pull the sword embryo out, you can't take it away." Renju's heart moved, and she reminded him. This disciple understands. As Xiao Hua spoke, he flew onto the high platform. Sure enough, when he arrived 3 feet away from the great wisdom sword, the true qi in his body froze and couldn't flow in the slightest. All of his magic power also disappeared, and he was no different from a mortal. The great wisdom sword was inserted into the solid rock of the high platform, and only 3 feet of the sword's body was exposed. As for how much it was inserted into the rock, it couldn't be seen clearly from the outside. However, in Xiao Hua's heart, the great wisdom sword was roughly 6 feet long, and it was like a stick in his hand. If it didn't have the appearance of a sword hilt and sword tip, it might as well be called a stick. Thinking about the weight of the great wisdom sword and the fact that it could only be inserted 3 feet into the rock after descending from the sky, it also showed the hardness of the rock. Yes, or it could be said that this magic treasure that had transformed into the Bright Realm was hard. Truthfully speaking, Xiao Hua didn't have much confidence in pulling the great wisdom sword out of the magic treasure. However, Xiao Hua understood that this was his only chance to obtain the great wisdom sword. If he failed, then in the future, thinking up to here, Xiao Hua took a deep breath and didn't dare to be careless. He held the hilt of the great wisdom sword with both hands, and then circulated his strength to pull it out. The sword embryo didn't move in the slightest. Xiao Hua gasped. Chapter 1641. Xiao Hua tried to use his strength to pull it out, and sure enough, the sword embryo was stuck between the cracks of the high platform, not moving at all. This, Xiao Hua was startled and secretly cursed. Then, Xiao Hua clenched his teeth, channeled all the strength in his body to his arms, and roared with a thunderous roar, "Rise!" Who knew how many kilograms of strength was used on the sword hilt, and the hearts of the people watching from afar were also raised. However, although the great wisdom heavy sword shook slightly, it couldn't be pulled out at all. Renju's eyes showed a trace of relief. Who knew how many Tai Ching sect disciples with incomparable strength couldn't pull out the sword embryo? So how could Xiao Hua do it? "Rise!" Xiao Hua shouted again. This time, he had already channeled the dragonization art. The meridians all over his body were slightly twisting like a huge dragon. Even the 13,200 black spots on his body were emitting a faint fiery light. At this time, Xiao Hua's body didn't have any flame, but everyone's eyes seemed to be burned by the flame. At this time, Xiao Hua's figure was still thin, but in everyone's eyes, it was like an incomparably huge body that could support the heavens and earth. Rise, rise. In the square, some disciple who didn't know the severity of the situation shouted out. Then, all the disciples, yes, except for the Tai Ching sect disciples, followed the beat and shouted, "Rise, rise, rise, rise." Along with everyone's cheers, the veins on Xiao Hua's arms popped out, and his face was also sinister, his eyes completely red. Bean-sized beads of sweat dripped down from his temples. That great wisdom-heavy sword was actually slowly pulled out inch by inch under Xiao Hua's incomparably enormous strength. Seeing the sword embryo being pulled out inch by inch, everyone's mood became increasingly high, and their cheers became louder and louder. In contrast, Renju, Deming, and the other Tai Ching sect cultivators' faces gradually became gloomy. In the beginning, it was the most difficult to pull out the sword, but when it was pulled out about a foot, it was already easy, but Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless and didn't dare to slack off in the slightest. Only when the remaining 2 feet were revealed did Xiao Hua let out a sigh of relief, and did his best to raise the 6 feet long sword embryo high above his head. Immediately, the whole square boiled, as if he pulled out the sword embryo himself, and all the disciples cheered. Good, good, Xiao Hua, good. Renju flew forward, clapped her hands, and said with a forced smile, "Little friend Zhao's strength is indeed astonishing. You are the strongest person in the 3 kingdoms of cultivators." "I wouldn't dare. This junior has already exhausted all his strength. If it were to grow another inch, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to pull it out." At this moment, Xiao Hua's bones were indeed limp and his tendons were numb. His strength was greatly exhausted, and he had no choice but to put down the great wisdom sword. He promptly asked, "Can Junior put this thing into the storage pouch?" "Yes, of course," Renju said. Xiao Hua took out a storage bag and placed the great wisdom sword inside. Sure enough, just as the great wisdom sword was placed inside, the spatial formation of the storage bag had already begun to gradually collapse. "How is it?" Renju smiled. "Sigh. I'm afraid this junior's journey back will be troublesome." Xiao Hua sighed. Renju nodded. "Little friend Xiao is right. I'm afraid the trouble has only just begun." Xiao Hua didn't know if Renju's words had a double meaning, but the great wisdom sword was his own. How would he give it to others? Soon after, Xiao Hua descended from the sky and returned to the Imperial Thunder sect disciples. Not to mention the envious gazes of Li Xiao and the others, and not to mention Sun Shu's slightly resentful gaze, Qian Diheng patted Xiao Hua's shoulder and scolded jokingly. "Junior brother Xiao, I didn't expect you hid your strength well." No, senior brother Qian, this junior brother is only strong. My cultivation is too far from senior brothers," Xiao Hua promptly said modestly. "Damn it, who told you cultivation?" Qian Diheng narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Tell me honestly, how did you get a relationship with Fairy Hong Xia? Quickly tell me, did you hold hands? Did you kiss?" Without waiting for Qian Diheng to finish, Xiao Hua glared. "Senior brother Qian, you can eat spirit fruits and drink spirit wine indiscriminately. These words can't be said carelessly. This junior brother and Fairy Hong Xia have some relationship, but it's far from what senior brother thinks." Just now, Fairy Hong Xia was also moved by this junior brother's righteousness, so she changed sides at the last moment. TSK, righteousness. "Junior brother Xiao, forget it. I will call you senior brother Xiao. You made the junior sister and senior brother fall out, and you have some relationship." Qian Diheng curled his lips and was about to say something when Renju clapped her hands in midair. "Disciples, this year's Feather Immortal Gathering has ended successfully. Counting with one's fingers, there are actually 14 disciples in the 13 cultivation countries who have built their foundation. This is a good result in all the previous Feather Immortal Gatherings. Our Tai Ching sect also feels very proud, especially now that the extraterrestrial divine item has an owner. It's a gift for a beauty, a treasure sword for a hero. It's also solved a big problem for our Tai Ching sect. Moreover, I didn't expect that the extraterrestrial divine item would be obtained by the disciple with the lowest cultivation in this feather immortal gathering. This disciple, TSK, actually forced the first place of the feather immortal gathering to build his foundation. Maybe he's the real first place of this gathering. Boom, there was a burst of sound. Of course, many things had happened in this short period of time. Many people still hadn't come to their senses. It was only until Rendezvous said that everyone started whispering and looking at Xiaohua from the Imperial Thunder School. Xiaohua couldn't distinguish the many meanings contained in those gazes. Now, he could be considered to be famous in the Feather Immortal Gathering. Xiaohua smiled bitterly in his heart. But when he heard Rendezvous say that there were 14 disciples in the Qi refining stage who had built their foundation, he was moved and understood why the first 2 places of this Feather Immortal Gathering were the disciples of the country of Qi. The disciples of the country of Meng and the country of Lian were all in the foundation building stage. Just like in the Thunder controlling sect, Qianhong had the highest cultivation, and Qianmo, who had the second highest cultivation, was naturally the first among all the disciples. And at this time, Rendezvous pushed him out. Xiaohua couldn't guess what she was thinking. In midair, Rendezvous said a few more things, and finally smiled. My Taiqing sect has already prepared spiritual wine and spiritual fruits. Fellow Taoists and disciples of various sects, please go back to your pavilions and rest for a while. Then, you can go to the square to attend the banquet. After we part today, we can only meet again after 10 years. Although 10 years is really too short for us cultivators, things have changed. 10 years later, someone might be a senior, or maybe none of you here will participate in the Feather Immortal Gathering again. Therefore, we should cherish today's meeting even more. I hope that when you meet again in the future, you can also remember today's meeting. We can help each other and tolerate each other. After Rendezvous finished speaking, the disciples of various sects returned to their pavilions. The disciples of the Taiqing sect were busy arranging the things needed for the banquet in the square. Xiaohua had just returned to the quiet room when he was called by Zhenqing. Xiaohua thought that Zhenqing would ask him why he gave up, so he had already thought of an excuse. Holding Zhenqing, he didn't say much and only said, "Let me take a look at that sword embryo." Xiaohua nodded and took out the sword embryo from his storage bag. In such a short time, the storage bag's spatial formation was about to be crushed. What Rendezvous said was indeed true. But then, Xiaohua was stunned. Since this sword embryo has never been pulled out by anyone, how did the Taiqing sect know that this sword embryo is heavy enough to crush the storage bag? What's wrong? Seeing that Xiaohua took out the sword embryo and didn't hand it over to him, Zhenqing asked curiously. "It's nothing, Grandmaster," Xiaohua said with a smile. "This sword embryo is really heavy. Grandmaster, be careful." "Yes, I understand." Zhenqing nodded. He didn't believe it. He was a golden core cultivator, so it was impossible for him to not be able to pick up this sword embryo. When Zhenqing took the sword embryo, even though he was prepared, his arms still sank slightly. He was shocked. It's really heavy. Then, he looked at Xiaohua's skinny body and carefully examined the sword embryo with his divine sense. He shook his head. "Xiaohua, this sword embryo was blocked by the restriction on the stage. I couldn't look at it carefully and thought that it was indeed the divine object that Rendezvous talked about. But now that I've looked at it carefully, I feel that this thing is a bit strange. Other than being heavy, it has no other use. I'm afraid you've been tricked by the Taiqing sect." "This?" Xiaohua pretended to be shocked and said anxiously, "What do you mean?" "The best way is to return this thing to the Taiqing sect at the banquet." Zhenqing smiled and looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua thought for a bit and shook his head. "I'm afraid this method will make my Imperial Thunder sect lose face. It's not appropriate." "Ha!" Zhenqing laughed and handed Pan Ruo to Xiaohua. Xiaohua put it in another storage bag. This storage bag was the one he got from the Changbai sect. Zhenqing said again, "You're right. Since you've won, this thing belongs to my Imperial Thunder sect. There's no reason to return it. If there's trouble because of this, then let the trouble come even more fiercely." Xiaohua's face was filled with joy. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, martial ancestor. It's no problem. You were able to force the Huanhua sect's Qi Refinement Peak disciple to enter Foundation building during the Feather Immortal Gathering. You've really made my Imperial Thunder sect lose face. How can I not protect you? You're not the #1 disciple, but now your reputation is even greater than the #1 disciple, Jin Qing said with a smile. Even Renju of the Taiqing sect was shocked. I was just lucky. Haha, that's not what I'm talking about. Jin Qing's face showed a rare, cunning expression. You also need to cultivate well and quickly reach the Foundation establishment stage. If you can dual cultivate with that fairy-like Foundation establishment cultivator of the Huanhua sect, it will be a good story for my Imperial Thunder sect and the Huanhua sect. Xiaohua's face turned red. He muttered a few words and said, I'll do it. I'll do it. Yes, go. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come and find me. Jin Qing waved his hand and was in a good mood. Also, this sword embryo seems to be related to an item in my Imperial Thunder sect. I only have a vague impression of it. When I find it in the future, I'll tell you. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He bowed and thanked Jin Qing. When he came out, he saw Jinyu looking for Jin Qing with a gloomy face. When he saw Xiaohua, Jinyu's lips moved a few times as if he wanted to say something. However, in the end, he didn't say anything. Xiaohua knew what he was thinking, but he didn't point it out. He smiled and bowed. Why did Martial Uncle Jin Qing call you? Jinyu couldn't help but ask. It's nothing. He just wanted to ask about my cultivation, Xiaohua said with a smile. I'll also report to Martial Ancestor that the magic treasure was only successfully refined last night. Jin Yu's heart fell. He said with a smile, Not bad, Xiaohua. You're broad-minded. You'll definitely become a great person in the future. Please teach me in the future, Martial Uncle. Xiaohua said respectfully. Yes, go. Make some preparations. The banquet is about to start. Jinyu waved his hand and went to find Jin Qing. Xiaohua stared at Jin Qing's back. He then turned around and returned to his meditation room. Not long later, the Taiqing sect disciples came to invite Xiaohua. Xiaohua followed the disciples to the plaza. He saw hundreds of jade tables placed all over the plaza. On the tables, there were many spiritual wines and spiritual fruits. Everything was already prepared. Author's note, Sigh, I'll only update once. In the future, depending on the condition of the third flower, I'll try to update twice on weekends. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote. Chapter 1642. The final banquet of the Feather Immortal Meat was naturally in the cultivation countries. The countries of Shi, Meng, and Lian were arranged in different regions. Xiaohua came to the banquet of the Imperial Thunder sect and scanned the area with his spiritual sense. He knew that Yin Jiecheng and Fairy Hongxia from the Huanhua sect weren't present. They should still be in the Foundation establishment stage. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua casually sat down. Looking at the noisy scene, he picked up a spiritual fruit and ate it. The wine pot on the table emitted a faint fragrance of wine. It was a pity that Xiaohua wasn't interested in spiritual wine and couldn't bring himself to taste it. Soon, Renju appeared in the square. She raised her wine cup and said something to improve their friendship. Xiaohua, who was below the stage, cursed in his heart. They had already fought. Those who died were dead, and those who entered the Foundation establishment stage were already in the Foundation establishment stage. What was the point of saying all this now? However, when he saw Jin Qing and the other Golden Core stage cultivators coming over with smiles and clapping from time to time, he saw them raising their wine cups at the right time. They seemed to be very harmonious. Is there a need for this? Xiaohua sneered. However, he immediately thought of what Jin Qing said to him. There are many things that are not up to you. Sometimes you don't want to do it, but you have to force yourself to do it. How can I not force myself? Xiaohua once again thought of how Jinyu had stopped him from defeating Kuan Fian. Perhaps only by cultivating to become even stronger and trampling all these cultured and fake people under my feet would I be able to obtain my freedom. Junior brother Xiao, congratulations, congratulations. While Xiaohua was deep in thought, Renju had already finished speaking. Qian Diheng walked over to Xiaohua with a cup of wine in his hand and said, I came to the Feather Immortal Assembly to broaden my horizons. I didn't think that I would be able to get acquainted with a person like Junior Brother Xiao. It is truly an honor. Come, Junior Brother Xiao, let me get you a toast. Xiao Hua glanced at Qian Di Hung, and a faint smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. He had come to the Feather Immortal Assembly because of Qian Di Hung. If it wasn't for the fact that Qian Di Hung's master had treated him as a stepping stone, he would never have come to the Tai Ching sect, and he wouldn't have met Fairy Hong Xia, so he wouldn't have been able to find out about Fairy Hong Xia's intentions. Karma. Karma. Xiao Hua sighed and raised his wine cup. Of course, there was a layer of karma. Although this Qian Di Hung was a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace and usually looked arrogant, compared to Zhen Qikue, he was very easy to get along with. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath, so Xiao Hua was still willing to talk to him more. When the spiritual wine entered his stomach, it was naturally another taste. When Qian Di Hung raised his cup again, Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "A toast is a token of my sincerity. If I drink more, it would be a burden to this little brother. I hope that Senior Brother Qian can understand." Qian Di Hung was taken aback. He shook his head with a smile and said, "Junior Brother Xiao, although we cultivators mainly focus on improving our cultivation, it is also necessary for us to socialize. Otherwise, if I had to do everything by myself, I'm afraid it would be very difficult." "Really? Please advise me," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "To put it simply, if you have a wide network, others will naturally think of you and invite you to participate in anything that happens in the cultivation world. Or, if you need something that you can't get on your own, you can pass it on to people you know. Although these people won't go out of their way to look for you, they have their own connections. In this way, won't your chances be greater?" Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Although you say so, but I'm not good with words and don't know how to socialize. Moreover, I feel that if I were a nascent soul cultivator now, I would just casually say a few words and foundation establishment cultivators would probably send themselves to me, right?" Qian Diheng shook his head. "I don't want to talk to you anymore. My goal is foundation establishment. I have never thought about nascent soul. Moreover, if I don't have these connections and don't have many opportunities, how can I talk about foundation establishment?" Gold core? After Qian Diheng went to the side to propose a toast, Xiao Hua sat down again. He did not agree with Qian Diheng's point of view in his heart. It was difficult to improve a cultivation realm, time was tight, and the lifespan of a cultivator was limited. If they did not put their hard work into cultivation, how could they talk about socializing? Just as he was thinking, Sun Shu came again. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "Senior Sister Sun, you don't have to say anything, right?" "Hee, Junior Brother Xiao, I was really shocked just now. I know that I definitely don't have the strength to defeat Yin Guichong of the Huanhua sect." "Stop, Senior Sister Sun. Can we not mention that?" Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. "You also know that I got a bargain." "A bargain?" Sun Shu smiled bitterly. "Magic treasures. Are they easy to refine?" "Forget it. Don't mention it." "But what about the other disciple of the Huanhua sect?" After today's Feather Immortal Assembly, the news that Fairy Hong Xia did not hesitate to fight with her senior brother for her lover will spread throughout the entire country of Xi. My junior sister Shui. When he heard Sun Shu mention lover, Xiao Hua's face became hot. He said in a low voice, "Senior sister Sun, what are you talking about? Junior brother, don't explain." "You should leave these words for junior sister Shui." Sun Shu waved her hand. Then she narrowed her eyes. "If you want me to put in a good word for you in front of junior sister Shui, you have to drink this wine. As for the training in a few years, you have to go too." When Shui Shui was mentioned, Xiao Hua had another feeling in his heart. If he were to refute Sun Shu now, it seemed that he did have some feelings for Shui Shui. "Forget it," Xiao Hua raised his cup and said. "Then I'll have to trouble senior sister Sun to put in a good word for me." No problem." An indescribable smile appeared on Sun Shu's face. After Sun Shu finished the toast, Li Xiao, Kuan Fian, and the others also came to toast. Although Xiao Hua's realm was the lowest, in everyone's eyes, he was definitely second only to Qian Hong, who was gradually advancing. Even Qian Mo, did not dare to say that he was ranked in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua was helpless and could only drink one by one. Fortunately, as a cultivator, if he did not like the effect of the spiritual wine, he could use his magic power to dissolve it. After Xiaohua drank the wine of his senior brothers and sisters, the atmosphere in the square also became lively. After all, the entire Feather Immortal Assembly had already ended. The disciples who could not establish foundation could only rely on their future opportunities. But that was all in the future. After dozens of days of life and death battles, it was normal for them to be happy for a short while. Junior brother Xiao, I will toast you. A slightly unfamiliar voice resounded from Xiao Hua's left side. When Xiao Hua turned around, he was stunned in thought. Oh no, someone wants to ask for something. The person who came was a Foundation Establishment cultivator. It was none other than the Tai Ching sect disciple Xiao Hua met in the first round of the Feather Immortal Assembly. He Fong Yuan. He must have stabilized his realm in these dozens of days. Thus he appeared here. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He quickly stood up and smiled apologetically. Senior you are a Foundation Establishment cultivator. This junior cannot be called junior brother. He Fong Yuan held the wine cup in his hand and smiled. I's Foundation Establishment opportunity is all thanks to junior brother Xiao. Others may not know the reason, but how could I not know? Junior brother Zhao's breadth of mind is rarely seen in the whole of Dawn Rain Continent. Your name will definitely shake Dawn Rain Continent in the future. I am still taking advantage of you by calling you junior brother. In the future, please take care of me, junior brother. What is this? Xiao Hua looked left and right. Fortunately, no one was paying attention to their conversation. Junior brother Xiao, don't worry. He Fong Yuan smiled. I did not tell anyone about what happened in the illusion formation. That's good. That was Senior He's opportunity. This junior was merely adding fuel to the fire. Xiao Hua was slightly relieved. He clapped his hands and took out the Tai green light rod, smiling. Senior, you're here to ask for this, right? I have already prepared it. He Fong Yuan, however, shook his head and smiled. I came for this item, but I'm not here to ask for it. Junior brother Xiao, drink this cup of wine, and I will explain. Seeing that he was not here to ask for something, Xiao Hua was happy. He kept the magic artifact and drank a cup of wine with He Fong Yuan. Only then did He Fong Yuan take out a jade slip, smiling. This Tai green light rod was refined from a Tai green light rod that I obtained when I was traveling in my early years. It is I's personal item. Junior brother Xiao has given I a great favor. I am unable to repay you, so I will give this magic artifact to you. This jade slip contains the refinement method of the Tai green light rod. Please keep it well. Great. Xiao Hua received the jade slip, smiling. Many thanks, Senior He. Seeing that Xiao Hua kept calling him Senior, He Fong Yuan was also helpless. He thought for a while and said, this Tai green light is innate metal energy. Back then, when I asked the sect's elder to refine this magic artifact, the elder said that refining a magic artifact alone would not display the subtlety of the Tai green light. Only refining a flying sword or refining the body would have great use. Xiao Hua's heart moved when he heard this, asking curiously, refining a flying sword? Refining the body? How to refine it? Junior really does not understand. He Fong Yuan explained. Refining the Tai green light into a flying sword will make the flying sword sharper by 30%. Its quality far surpasses ordinary flying swords. Moreover, according to the elder, if this item is placed in Huan country, it is a rare opportunity, a supreme item for nurturing flying swords. Xiao Hua was overjoyed, asking again, then refining the body. If junior brother Xiao cultivates to nascent soul realm, this Tai green light can be refined in a true life light, spitting out sword light to kill people in an instant. Nascent soul realm. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. This was too far-fetched. After thinking for a while, he smiled. Then refining the flying sword method? Does Senior have it? Of course I do not have it. He Fong Yuan smiled. However, the elder left the method of separating the Tai green light from this magic artifact in the jade slip. If junior brother Xiao has the chance in the future, you could try it. Many thanks to Senior He for being so righteous. Xiao Hua bowed in thanks. He Fang Yuan saw Xiao Hua receive the Tai E green light and the jade slip, and was also happy. He had borrowed Xiao Hua's hands to reach Foundation establishment. If he did not return this huge favor, it would affect his mental state in the future. Right now, he was relieved and drank another cup with Xiao Hua. After sending off He Fang Yuan, Xiao Hua had yet to sit down when another voice came from the right. Junior brother Xiao, you are really busy. Even a Foundation establishment cultivator came to toast you. Chapter 1643. This was a female voice. When Xiao Hua turned his head to look, he saw that it was also a Foundation establishment cultivator. It was Zhong Xiaoan from Immortal Music Sect, who had reached Foundation establishment under Xiao Hua. Beside Zhong Xiaoan was a male cultivator, whom Xiao Hua also recognized. It was Zhong Tianxing from Xianlu Sect, who was guarding in front of the illusion array that day. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Needless to say, this Zhong Xiaoan had the same intention as He Fang Yuan. He would have to drink this cup of wine. Senior Zhong, Junior congratulates Senior for successfully reaching Foundation establishment. Xiao Hua very much took the initiative to raise his cup and say, Zhong Xiaohan's beautiful eyes stared fixedly at Xiao Hua as she raised her wine cup and drained it in one gulp. Soon after, she smiled and said, Actually, I came here to ask something. However, after seeing Tai Ching's sex, He Fang Yuan come over to propose a toast. I'm afraid I don't need to ask anymore. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said to himself, If you don't need to ask, then don't ask. What's the point of saying it out loud? I didn't take anything from you. Who would have thought that Zhong Xiaoan would say, I boast of my good looks, and I'm in the Foundation establishment stage now. I originally wanted to talk more with Junior Martial Brother Xiao, but I didn't expect that Junior Martial Brother Xiao had already been taken. Today, you even acted in a scene of a hero and beauty meeting in the Hao realm, which really made me jealous. Sigh, I don't have a chance anymore. I can only wish Junior Martial Brother Xiao good luck. Xiao Hua didn't expect that Zhong Xiaoan, who appeared to be rather quiet and virtuous, would say such words, and a trace of red appeared on his face. Zhong Tan, who was at the side, took half a step forward and said with a smile, My sister always speaks casually. Junior Brother Xiao, please don't blame her. We are here today to thank Junior Brother Xiao for his kindness that day. Come, I address myself as Senior Brother and propose a toast to Junior Brother Xiao. I don't dare. Xiao Hua raised his cup and drank. Zhong Tianxing took out a storage pouch from his bosom and handed it over to Xiao Hua. He said with a smile, It's all thanks to Junior Martial Brother Xiao that my humble sister was able to step into the Foundation building realm. These past few days I've been thinking for a long time, but I still don't know what to give to Junior Martial Brother. The day before yesterday, I just came out of seclusion and learned that Junior Martial Brother Xiao has some hobbies. It just so happens that I also have something in my hands. Is it to Junior Martial Brother's liking? Oh, Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He took the storage pouch and saw that there weren't many things inside. There were some Foundation establishment on and a white skull. That skull was different from an ordinary one. It was at least 10 times bigger. This is something I obtained from Million Meng Mountains. It should be similar to my sister's soul collecting bell. They are both related to souls. Zhong Tianxing said via voice transmission. This item has been with I for a long time. Now, I can give it to Junior Brother Xiao. I hope Junior Brother Xiao will accept it. As for the other Foundation establishment pills, I have accumulated over the years. Now that I have no use for them, I will give them to Junior Brother Xiao. Zhong Xiaoan smiled and said, I hope Junior Brother Xiao will soon complete the Qi refining stage and enter the Foundation establishment stage. With Junior Martial Brother Zhao's cultivation, I'm afraid he'll be able to build his foundation within a few years. I will respectfully listen to Junior Martial Brother Zhao's good news from Immortal Music Sect. Zhong Tianxing clapped his hands and said, I also have a lot of hatred right now. Why wasn't I in the same group as Junior Martial Brother Xiao? Fate. Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and laughed. After receiving the storage pouch, Zhong Tianxing and Zhong Xiaohan exchanged a few words. Before leaving, Zhong Tianxing even invited Xiao Hua to visit Immortal Music Sect when he travels in the future. Xiao Hua naturally agreed with a smile. He was very confident that he would be able to build his foundation in a few years. After that, he would naturally travel in the Xiaoyu continent. Perhaps this is also a form of socializing. Xiao Hua thought of Qian Diheng's words. Soon after, another dozen or so disciples came over to chat with Xiao Hua. Among them, there were those who admired Xiao Hua's cultivation, and there were also those who were jealous of Xiao Hua's relationship with Fairy Hongxia. Xiao Hua casually dismissed them all. Only when it was deep into the night did he return to his quiet room. On the square, there were still many heroic cultivators who were still calling out to their friends, as if they really wanted to get drunk. Xiao Hua returned to his quiet room and activated the restriction. Then, he closed his eyes for a moment. With a clap of his hand, he took out the Great Wisdom Sword from his storage pouch. However, in the middle of the night, the storage pouch's formation had been crushed again. It looked like the storage pouch could not be used again. Holding the Great Wisdom Sword in his hand, a familiar feeling came from his hand. That ice-cold feeling seemed to have originated from a long time ago. Calling Goldie out from the space, he asked. Although Goldie did not know the name of the Great Wisdom Sword, it knew that this thing was once used by Xiao Hua. It even said that Xiao Hua used this sword embryo as a staff. Heavenly Staff Technique? In an instant, Xiao Hua came to a realization. After sending Goldie into the space, he took the sword embryo and slowly recalled it in his quiet room. He knew the use of formations on the Xiaoyu continent. He did not expect that he actually knew about formations before. However, when Xiao Hua had just placed the skull and the two white bones in a separate place in the space, before he had the time to carefully comprehend the rabbit talisman that had suddenly appeared, he saw the restriction in the quiet room shake, as if someone was calling out to Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua removed the restriction, he saw Sun Shu standing in front of the door. He was informing Xiao Hua that the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect would gather in front of the pavilion in 30 minutes. They would return together with the other sects in the country of Shi. So fast, Xiao Hua looked at the sky outside. It seemed that it was still early. He could not help but feel a little surprised. He had nothing to pack, so he just stood at the door of the quiet room and talked to Sun Shu. Haha, since the Feather Immortal Assembly has ended, we naturally have to return to the Imperial Thunder Sect as soon as possible. We have fought for a long time in the Feather Immortal Assembly, so we have some comprehensions. We still have to return to the sect and carefully savor these comprehensions. On one hand, we strive to improve our cultivation, and on the other hand, we have to find the opportunity to build our foundation. Sun Shu said with a smile. There have been such examples in the past. Some disciples did not have a good ranking in the Feather Immortal Assembly, but instead returned to the sect to build their foundation. Xiao Hua understood that those who could participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly, other than cultivators like Qian Diheng and himself, were also lacking in opportunities. Perhaps they would encounter one at any time. At this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly felt a gaze sweep past him. It gave him an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Xiao Hua did not turn back. He only released his Buddhist awareness. As expected, there was a quiet room at the end of the pavilion. A head popped out from the quiet room. It was Mingu. This guy was staring at him fiercely and muttering something in his mouth. That's strange. I did not provoke this guy. Why am I being targeted? Xiao Hua was extremely puzzled. Previously, when he visited him, he was cursed by him. Now, oh right, last night at the banquet, Mingu and Yuan Bo seemed to be not far away. They did not come to propose a toast. It seems that there were many people who proposed a toast last night. There were people from almost every sect. However, none of the disciples from the Changbai sect came. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the banquet. A trace of vigilance rose in his heart. Although the disciples of the Changbai sect did not dare to mess around at the Feather Immortal Assembly, this does not mean that they will not cause trouble for me in the future. Chapter 1644. There were 5 sects from the country of Shi that came to the Taiching sect to participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly. They were the Splendid Sect, Xuanyin School, Qiqiao Sect, Imperial Thunder Sect, and Huanhua Sect. However, Yin Guichong and Fairy Hongxia were in the process of building their foundation and couldn't leave for the time being. Therefore, only the Imperial Thunder Sect and the other 3 sects left together. This year, the 5 major sects in the country of Shi gained a lot from the Feather Immortal Assembly. Other than the Xuanyin School that didn't have any disciples in the Foundation Establishment stage, the other 4 sects all had disciples in the Foundation Establishment stage. Especially the Huanhua sect, there were actually 2 disciples in the Foundation Establishment stage. Of course, the Huanhua sects Yin Guichong and Fairy Hongxia, who were in the Qi refinement realm, had some tricks up their sleeves. However, it was undeniable that they were in the Foundation Establishment stage. There were almost 100 cultivators that returned to the country of Shi. The worry in Xiao Hua's heart disappeared. Even if the Changbai sect had some ideas, they would temporarily restrain themselves after the Feather Immortal Assembly. They definitely wouldn't face the 4 sects of the country of Shi. Due to the other 3 sects' different routes from the Taiqing sect back to the country of Shi, the journey took more than a month. During this time, the disciples of the 4 sects got along well and often visited each other's flying treasures. Although Xiao Hua hadn't been to the flying boat of the Splendid Sect, the flying shuttle of the Xuanyin School, and the immortal bird of the Qiqiao sect, the disciples of the 3 sects often visited Xiao Hua on the Thunderboat. After all, Xiao Hua's fleeting performance in the Feather Immortal Assembly was too shocking. These disciples all felt that Xiao Hua was a hidden expert and was at least in the Qi refinement realm. However, Xiao Hua was indeed in the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refinement realm and was about to enter the middle stage. This wasn't just seen through magic. Even the disciples of the other 3 sects could clearly feel that this guy was in the early stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refinement realm. He was definitely not lying. As for Xiao Hua, during the exchanges with the disciples of the other 3 sects, he received many precious experiences in the middle stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refinement realm. Although the eldest senior brother Xiang Yang had told him about these experiences, it was only one-sided. Xiao Hua benefited a lot from listening to the experiences of so many different disciples. Not long after flying to the country of Shi, he actually stepped into the middle stage of the 12th layer of the Qi refinement realm. How is that possible? Not only were the probing disciples confused, even the Foundation Establishment cultivators and Golden Core cultivators from the Shanghua sect, Xuanyin School, and Qiqiao sect were surprised. How could a Qi refining realm early stage disciple defeat a Qi refining realm peak disciple? If there was a reason, it could only be the magic treasure. Since they had entered the country of Shi, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and went their separate ways, returning to their own sects. On this day, the thunderboat of the Imperial Thunder Sect had just arrived at a mountain stream and was about to fly in the direction of the Imperial Thunder Sect. This route was the shortest one. If everything went well, they would be able to return to the shocking Thunder Peak in 10 days. But at this moment, an incomparable feeling of fear came from the depths of Xiao Hua's heart. Xiao Hua had encountered this kind of fear before. It should be a kind of feeling, a kind of vigilance of encountering danger. Martial Ancestor Jin. Xiao Hua didn't dare to delay and hurriedly transmitted his voice. Disciple has something to report. Seeing that Xiao Hua was using telepathy, Jin Qing found it strange. She waved her hand and set up a restriction. She asked, "What's the matter?" Reporting to Martial Ancestor, Disciple wants to ask if an enemy attacks my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples, would they lay an ambush in front? Xiao Hua asked anxiously. This. Jin Qing was slightly taken aback. Our Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples don't seem to have anything that others would covet, right? That sword embryo of yours can't be considered treasure. It can't be worth the attention of a middle-stage Golden Core cultivator, right? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Martial Ancestor, could it be that you forgot about the storage bag of the Changbai sect? Jin Qing's expression became serious. She nodded and said, "Yes. Although we have already returned 90% of the things in the storage bag to the Taibai sect, the other sects don't know about it. if they have the heart to covet it. We will be in trouble. Then she frowned. The distance of 10 days isn't far, but it isn't near either. I don't know which thief would lay an ambush here. But thinking about it, the Imperial Thunder sect and the other 3 sects went together and took a detour. It was possible that there were cultivators from other sects who took a shortcut and blocked the front. Moreover, the most hateful thing was that they knew the Imperial Thunder sect had a golden core cultivator, but they still dared to block them. There must be an even more powerful expert. They actually dared to bully my Imperial Thunder sect at the gate. Zhen Qing clenched her teeth. Although this was only a possibility, Zhen Qing didn't dare to gamble. Not to mention her own life, there were still the lives of her 20 disciples. She couldn't gamble. Jin Yu, change the direction. Don't fly to the Thunderclap Peak for now. Zhen Qing made a prompt decision. She didn't care whether Xiao Hua's worry was real or not and ordered Zhen Yu. Zhen Yu was stunned. Immediately, he was shocked and hurriedly flew in the other direction according to Zhen Qing's instructions. On a beautiful plain, there was lush green grass that was about a foot long. Under the bright sun, it emitted a green brilliance. A gust of wind blew, causing the green grass to rise and fall. It was like the ripples on the water surface that spread to the boundless distance. The falling green grass revealed the greedy beasts hidden in the grass. Dozens of rabbits were startled by the gust of wind. They rushed out of the grass and hurriedly ran away. One of the fat rabbits was running away in a panic. With a pung sound, it bumped into an invisible area. There was clearly nothing there, but the rabbit was knocked unconscious and fell to the side. The place where the rabbit bumped into emitted a bright light, and a human figure appeared. This person was wearing a camouflage robe and had a tall stature. He lowered his head and looked at the unconscious rabbit in the grass. He let out a sinister laugh and said, The ancient people always waited for rabbits to come. I was just setting up an ambush here, and I was actually found by a rabbit." As he spoke, he stretched out his left hand, and a faint green flame appeared in his palm. When the flame appeared, the surroundings actually emitted a trace of coldness. At this moment, the rabbit that had fainted earlier suddenly opened its eyes. Its fat body flipped over, and its 4 stubby legs stomped on the ground. It quickly scuttled into the bushes and disappeared without a trace. Seeing that the rabbit was actually pretending to be dead, the person was stunned. However, he still waved his hand, and a wisp of fire flew out from the green flame into the distance. When the wisp of fire landed in the grass, a few screams sounded and a foul smell came from the grass in the distance. However, there was no movement. The person in the camouflage robe clapped his hand, and a gray-white brilliance hit the air in front of him. The brilliance gradually expanded and soon covered the person in the camouflage robe. However, just as the brilliance covered the person, from the distant horizon, 2 sword lights, one green and one purple, flew over like meteors and streaked across the sky to the left of the person. They're finally here. The person in the camouflage robe was startled. He clapped his hand, and a yellow talisman appeared in his hand. He activated the magic power in his hand, and the yellow talisman turned into a dark red brilliance and landed in the grass. In an instant, it disappeared, and the person in the camouflage also disappeared into the grass. The Imperial Thunder sect disciples rode on the Thunder ship and flew in another direction for several days. Then, they changed direction and flew back to the Imperial Thunder sect. This time, after flying for 2 days, that very frightening feeling appeared in Xiao Hua's heart again. Strange. Xiao Hua frowned. He didn't understand. If there was really danger ahead, how could he have sensed it so early? If he had such a miraculous ability, then wouldn't he be able to avoid danger forever? This is really strange. I don't know how to explain it to martial ancestor Jin. Xiao Hua thought with difficulty. The first time he felt it, he could explain it as a sudden impulse. However, the second time was really hard to explain. However, after flying for another half a day, that feeling appeared again and again, making Xiao Hua feel very uncomfortable. Thus, Xiao Hua came to see Zhen Qing again. "Xiao Hua, you're saying you're still afraid that there will be cultivators in front of us. Hearing Xiao Hua's worry, Jin Qing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He frowned and said, "The last time we came back, we were together with Shanghua sect disciples." It might have attracted the attention of others and let them know that we were returning to the Imperial Thunder sect. Since you mentioned it last time, I also became more vigilant and released my spiritual sense to check outside. However, Jin Qing raised his eyes and looked outside the Thunder ship. Layers of clouds were pushed aside by the Thunder ship, and the whistling heavenly wind was blocked outside the light barrier of the Thunder ship. He said in a low voice, "However, in the past 10 days, I didn't see anything wrong. Furthermore, this place is very close to the Imperial Thunder sect, which sect would send 2 golden core stage cultivators to intercept us. Even if you obtained a large number of pills during the Feather Immortal Gathering, it isn't worth 2 golden core stage cultivators to attack, right?" Xiaohua bit his lips and thought for a long time. His gaze was firm as he bowed and said, "Ancestor Jin, disciple is indeed a bit uneasy. I've experienced this feeling before. It's very sharp." "Ancestor, please," Jin Qing sighed. "Xiaohua, it said that only spirit-severing stage cultivators have this ability. Even I don't have it. It's unlikely that you have it, right?" "Disciple doesn't dare." Xiaohua scratched his head. He was quite anxious. At this moment, he already had an idea. He thought that it should be the effect of the karmic hand in his space. However, he couldn't explain it. "Disciple just wants the Imperial Thunder sect disciples to safely return to the Thunderclap Peak. I don't ask for anything else." Xiaohua said anxiously, "Since Ancestor has already taken a detour, can you take another detour?" "Forget it." Although Jin Qing was a golden core stage cultivator, his heart had always been soft. He was just like his name, Qing. He waved his hand and shouted, "Jin Yu, turn the Thunder ship around and take a detour. Disciple understands." Although Jin Yu didn't understand, he still followed Jin Qing's order and steered the Thunder ship in another direction. This time, the Imperial Thunder sect disciples were in an uproar. Previously, if they took a shortcut, they would have already arrived at the Imperial Thunder sect. However, this time they had to take a detour. They were afraid that they would be delayed for several days. Therefore, the Qi refining disciples didn't dare to trouble Jin Qing. They asked Qianhong to find Xiao Hua and ask him what was going on. Chapter 1645. Seeing that Qianhong, who had reached the peak of Qi refining, came over to inquire, Xiao Hua could only smile apologetically and tell him the whole story of his suspicions. Qianhong frowned slightly, but didn't say anything. He turned back and explained to the other disciples. All the disciples understood and naturally couldn't say anything. However, in the next 2 days, the envy between the disciples' brows gradually turned into resentment and anger. Xiao Hua even occasionally heard a few disciples of Earth Thunder Palace whispering, "He took the benefits for no reason and made us take the risk. If even Grandmaster Jin had to avoid him, what kind of cultivation base would he have? And that guy, how much benefits did he take?" These words might be intentional or unintentional, but in Xiao Hua's ears, he just pretended not to hear them. Sun Shu and Qian Diheng also came over to talk to him when they were not cultivating, but they never mentioned anything about taking a detour. On the 3rd day, Xiao Hua's heart palpitated again. This time, Xiao Hua was truly hesitant. After hesitating for a long time, he came to look for Jin Qing again. Naturally, Jin Qing didn't agree this time. He only smiled and said, "Xiao Hua, this old man won't say anything unnecessary. These days, this old man has been thinking carefully. Your panicky thinking might be related to your background as a rogue cultivator, right? In the past, you didn't belong to any sect and were used to being alarmed. Now it's different. You have Imperial Thunder sect and this old man to protect you. We don't need to be afraid of any rogue cultivator. As long as you're on this thunderboat, this old man would like to see which cultivator in the country of Shi dares to touch you." Xiao Hua was extremely moved. He bowed and said, "This disciple isn't worried about my own safety, but I'm afraid I'll implicate many senior brothers and sisters of Imperial Thunder Sect. Presumably, Grandmaster has also heard some scattered gossip and knows the feelings of all the disciples. If there is really danger ahead, this disciple deserves to encounter it. However, all the senior martial brothers and sisters are innocent. This disciple has no reason to drag them down. Jin Qing frowned and said with displeasure, Xiao Hua. What do you mean? Xiao Hua sighed. This disciple has been a rogue cultivator for a long time. I'm good at escaping. Grandmaster also knows that this disciple's flying speed is extremely fast. I should be ranked first among all the disciples. This disciple thinks that if the enemy is coming for me, as long as I disappear from the Thunderboat, the enemy will not make things difficult for the other disciples on the Thunderboat. Xiao Hua, do you think I won't be able to protect you? Jin Qing was slightly angered. Disciple doesn't dare. Disciple just doesn't want to bring trouble to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua explains, moreover, Grandmaster, think about it. If those bastards came prepared, they should know that Grandmaster is on this Thunderboat. Since they dare to come, then they should have 100% confidence. Hearing this, Jin Qing was a little disappointed. These days, he had also thought of this. He had also used the secret lightning transmission technique of the Imperial Lightning Sect to send a message to the Imperial Lightning Sect, but he hadn't received a reply. Presumably, the message had been intercepted by someone. Didn't this mean that they had the strength to fight against him? Moreover, Grandmaster, you bear the heavy responsibility of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. You have to send all the disciples back to the Imperial Thunder Sect safely. Grandmaster, do you think this disciple is more important, or the other disciples? Xiao Hua said patiently. Although he didn't mention the Heavenly Thunder Palace or the Earthly Thunder Palace, Jin Qing knew that even though Xiao Hua was in the limelight at the Feather Immortal Assembly and gained face for the Imperial Thunder Sect, he was still far less important than the other disciples. What's your plan? Jin Qing finally relented. This disciple will leave the Thunderboat first and find a remote place to hide. I will return to the Imperial Thunder Sect after a few days. When those bastards saw that this disciple was not on the Thunderboat, they would most likely let the Thunderboat go. When Grandmaster returns to the Imperial Thunder Sect, you can find a teacher to find this disciple. Xiao Hua said. Jin Qing sighed and scanned with his divine consciousness. He shook his head slightly. This is the Weeping Moon Abyss, a famous dangerous place in the country of Shi. There are many powerful spiritual beasts here. If you go out now, how can you protect yourself? All right, Grandmaster knows that the more dangerous it is, the greater the chance of this disciple escaping. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Forget it. Xiao Hua, this old man really admires your selfless thinking. This old man will accept this favor. Jin Qing sighed. When this old man returns to the Imperial Thunder Sect, I will definitely report this to the Sect Master. My Imperial Thunder Sect has been developing in seclusion for these years. Although we have some achievements, but it is really depressing. Someone actually intercepted my Imperial Thunder Sect disciples near my Imperial Thunder Sect. All right, since Grandmaster agrees, this disciple will take his leave. I hope Grandmaster can bring the disciples back to the Thunderclap Peak safely. Xiao Hua said with a bow. Jin Qing patted his storage bag and took out some elixirs. This old man doesn't have many elixirs that you can use. Take these and use them to recover your magic power. Xiao Hua took them. Many thanks, Grandmaster. Also, can Grandmaster tell this disciple the map of the Weeping Moon Abyss and the route back to the Imperial Thunder Sect? No problem. As Jin Qing spoke, he took out a jade slip and used his magic power to carve the things that Xiao Hua wanted into the jade slip. Xiao Hua took the jade slip and carefully kept it. He said respectfully, perhaps this disciple is overthinking. However, Grandmaster still has to be careful. If you can think of a way to return, it is better to think of a way. It is best if you don't meet with them. How could Jin Qing not know this? He nodded his head. Soon after, Jin Qing ordered Jin Yu to release a bit of the restriction on the lightning ship. Xiao Hua leaped out from the gap and looked around. He randomly chose a direction and flew downwards. What is this guy trying to do? Seeing Xiao Hua and Jin Qing talking for a moment, Xiao Hua got off the lightning ship and flew away. The disciples felt strange. Jin Qing raised his voice. I believe all of you already know that this old man changed his direction a few times because there were experts blocking the path ahead. Xiao Hua felt that it was because of his own reasons and was afraid that he would implicate all of you. Thus, he got off the lightning ship and hoped that he could lead the experts away. I don't think it's that simple. A female disciple from the Earth Thunder Palace sneered. She lowered her voice and said, I think that he is afraid that the things he obtained will be taken away by the Imperial Thunder Sect. Perhaps he wants to get rid of those things first? That's right. Everyone here, who would be stupid enough to immediately leave Grandmaster Jin's protection and face the experts alone. He must have some other ulterior motive. These disciples lowered their voices and discussed with the disciples they were familiar with. However, Jin Qing could hear them clearly. He frowned and coughed. You all should be more vigilant when you are cultivating. If an accident really happens, it will be a fierce battle. Disciple understands. The disciples cupped their hands and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. Only Sun Shu didn't close her eyes. She looked at the place where Xiao Hua jumped off the lightning ship with a strange expression in her eyes. As for Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha, after leaving the bright realm of the Taiqing sect, they immediately activated their swords and flew towards the Huan Kingdom. They had been flying for more than 10 days. The green grassland below them stretched as far as the eye could see. It really looked like a piece of green jade placed on the ground. On the purple sword light, Zhang Yuha complained, Sister, it wasn't easy for us to gather all the people to come to the Feather Immortal Assembly. Although you and I can't represent the Huan Sword sect, it's still quite fun to participate. Why don't you let me fight? How many times have I told you? They are all disciples at the peak of the Qi refining realm. They are only equivalent to the 9th grade of the sword nurturing realm. They are 1 grade lower than us. What sense of accomplishment do you have to fight with them? My hands are itchy. I want to play with them. Zhang Yuha said with a smile. Sister, don't just think about playing. You should think about how to advance to the 2nd grade of the Bright Sword realm. Didn't Master say that it's good? Only cultivation is the right way. Sister, of course I think about it all the time. However, if we sword cultivators don't fight, how can our flying swords advance? How can our cultivation advance? Forget it. I can't win against you. Zhang Yutong waved her hand. Anyway, we have already completed our mission in Meng Kingdom. When we have the chance, we will find an opponent with a similar cultivation level to fight. The Taiqing sect is really asking for a lot. It's just a 2,000-year-old Xianin spiritual grass, but they actually exchanged so many things for us. Zhang Yuha couldn't help but say, if we hadn't made sufficient preparations this time, I'm afraid, speaking up to here, Zhang Yuha covered her mouth and laughed. That cultivator called Xiao Hua is really ignorant. I'm afraid his profound grass is at least 8,000 years old. I don't know where he got it from, but he actually only wants a shabby sword nurturing technique to exchange it with us. If he wanted more, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to get that Xianin spiritual grass. You see, Zhang Yutong said with a smile. Just now you said that the Taiqing sect is too stingy, but now you're saying that they are stupid. What kind of logic is this? An 8,000-year-old Xianin spiritual grass isn't much worse than a 2,000-year-old Xianin spiritual grass. You say if I don't talk about him, who else can I talk about? Zhang Yu has said without holding back. They are similar in many aspects, but there are still essential differences. Zhang Yutong shook her head. It's just that we were in a hurry that day and didn't examine it carefully. Now that we have discovered the amazing medicinal effect of this Xianin spiritual grass, it's too late. If we meet him again in the future, we will have to compensate him. Just as she said this, Zhang Yutong's face turned cold. She looked ahead and sneered. Sister, just now you said you wanted to fight with someone. Now the opportunity has come. I don't know which small sect disciple has the guts to intercept a sword cultivator. I'm afraid that we sword cultivators haven't been in the cultivation world for a long time. So these disciples have forgotten the prestige of sword cultivators. Zhang Yuhe and Zhang Yutong's cultivations were similar. Zhang Yutong had discovered the heretics ahead, so Zhang Yuhe naturally also discovered them. In the air, several li in front of the purple and green twin swords, a brown-robed cultivator stood with his hands clasped behind his back, coldly staring at the purple and green twin swords streaking across the sky. To be continued. Chapter 1646. It's him? Zhang Yuhe exclaimed in astonishment as she scanned the area with her spiritual sense. Oh, Zhang Yutong was bewildered. The Foundation establishment cultivator in the distance didn't seem familiar to her. Sister, you've forgotten? Zhang Yuhe sneered. That day, at the Feather Immortal Gathering, this person came out of the illusion array and used a flying sword to assassinate another heavily injured female cultivator. I blocked it with my purple spirit. How can such a person be qualified to use a flying sword? Oh, Zhang Yutong nodded. I have some impression of him. However, this guy seemed to have been expelled from the Taiching sect's Bright Realm by their master. Oh no, Senior Deming had thought of many things, but he missed out on this guy. Could it be that he wants to cause trouble for my sister? Zhang Yuhe looked at Lu Weigang, who was flying closer and closer. Isn't he just a Dao sect cultivator who just stepped into the Foundation establishment stage? How can he be a match for me, a sword cultivator? If he has any ideas, I'll let my purple spirit taste his blood. After saying that, Zhang Yue's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Sister, don't be careless. Zhang Yutong slowed down her sword and looked around with her spiritual sense. She didn't find anything special. She said curiously, since this guy is blocking the way, he must be confident. But can he stop the two of us by himself? Could it be he's here to thank us? Zhang Yuhe smiled. Did my sword give him an epiphany and let him find the opportunity to enter the Foundation establishment stage? That's why he came to wait for us. Zhang Yutong rolled her eyes at her sister. The two of them continued to fly towards Lu Weigang. When the two of them got close to Lu Weigang, they stopped. Zhang Yuhe said coldly, Fellow cultivator, why are you standing in the air? The wind is so strong. Why don't you sleep in the cave? Haha, I know who'll wake up first. I will remember this. After I capture you two, I will go back to my cave and sleep. Lu Weigang said with a laugh. Ha ha ha. Zhang Yue's laughter was even louder than Lu Weigang's. It was as if she had seen the funniest thing in the world. She pointed at him and said, Dozens of days ago, you were still a little aura-refining cultivator. Even if you're a foundation-building cultivator today, you're still no match for I. How dare you boast so shamelessly about taking us down? Then, as he laughed, he opened his mouth, and the purple spirit flying sword flew out and stabbed towards Lu Weigang's head. Seeing the purple sword light coming at him, Lu Weigang didn't dare to be careless. He made a gesture, and a light red light curtain suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking the flying sword. With a dang sound, the flying sword seemed to have stabbed an iron wall, and a few sparks burst out from the light curtain. Go! When Zhang Yuhe saw that her flying sword was blocked, she was slightly taken aback. She activated her magic power, and the purple spirit flying sword expanded slightly. It was as if it had just woken up and stretched. Then, it charged towards the light screen again. With a soft PU sound, a small hole was actually drilled into the light curtain this time. The flying sword very nimbly drilled into the hole. Lu Weigang obviously didn't expect that the flying sword could be driven in this way. His face was full of shock, but immediately after, he didn't seem to move at all. The light curtain flashed, and the red light became thicker. The light curtain seemed to have expanded and enveloped the entire flying sword. Zhang Yuhe felt that the purple spirit seemed to have sunk into a sticky quagmire. There was a huge obstruction in front of it. If she didn't increase her magic power, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to succeed. I like to see what other tricks you, a foundation-building cultivator, have up your sleeves. Zhang Yuhe was furious. Her face flushed red. She shouted, Quick! She put her hands together and pointed at the purple spirit with her index and middle fingers. The purple spirit seemed to have taken an elixir. With a hoo sound, it expanded and became as big as a door. The entire sword gave off a light purple sword light and slashed towards the light red light curtain. Zilala, under the sword light, the light curtain was like ice and snow in boiling water. It melted little by little, without the slightest bit of resistance. Little girl, watch this Taoist master's methods. Lu Weigong's face was ferocious. He patted his storage bag and took out an orange handkerchief. With a wave of his hand, the handkerchief landed on the light curtain in front of him. The same light flashed, and the light curtain turned blood red. Just as Zhang Yuhe was about to activate her magic power, she heard Zhang Yutong, who had been guarding the array all this time, shout angrily, "Who is it?" Then, her cherry lips spat out a green sword light that suddenly pierced toward a place about 10 feet below her feet. With a soft pu sound, a few flashes of light followed by a scream. At the center of the flashes of light was a Qi Refining Stage 11 cultivator. That cultivator held an array flag in one hand, and his other hand was dripping with blood. It was the green spirit that had pierced him. Just as Zhang Yutong was about to activate the green spirit to kill that cultivator, a light mist appeared from the center of the flashes of light. In the blink of an eye, the cultivator disappeared. Humph! Zhang Yutong's cyan spirit flying sword shuttled back and forth a few times within the light mist, but missed every time. Only then did she point her finger, and the cyan spirit flying sword drew a beautiful streak of green light in the air, rushing towards purple spirit's location. Ha ha! With a laugh, a tall and sturdy cultivator appeared beside Lu Weigang. The cultivator was wearing a disguise, and his face couldn't be seen. The cultivator was holding a small golden bell in his hand. With a wave of his hand, he threw into the air. The golden bell spun in the air, and golden rings of light scattered down, covering the cultivator and Lu Weigang in the middle. A magic weapon? Zhang Yuhe and Zhang Yutong's expressions changed slightly. They scanned with their divine sense, but they couldn't see through the cultivator's cultivation at all. They looked at each other, and there was a trace of shock in their eyes. Then, the two exchanged glances and pointed their fingers. The green and purple spirits turned into slender sword lights and suddenly pierced toward the brilliance of the golden bell. Ding ding! The two flying swords only pierced about an inch into the golden light and couldn't go any further. At this moment, Zhang Yuhe raised her hand and swiped it in the air. A green light flashed and followed the momentum of her palm and suddenly flew to the left. Quick, block it! The cultivator shouted and took out an array flag. He waved it in the air, and a faint mist appeared in front of the light, blocking the green light. Go! Zhang Yuhe frowned and shouted. The green light showed its shape. It was another flying sword. This flying sword spun and rushed into the mist. With a soft squeak, a gap appeared in the mist. Humph! A flying sword message? The cultivator sneered. Since I've made my move, you still want to send a message? As he spoke, he waved his hand, and a spell was cast at the flying sword. Go! Zhang Yutong shouted, and the green spirit sword flew back. She leaped and landed on the sword light. Her body merged with the sword, and she flew in the opposite direction of the flying sword message. Zhang Yuhe also cast a spell, but she controlled the purple spirit sword to fly in the direction of the flying sword message. The flying sword was indeed fast, and before the cultivator's spell could even land on the messenger's flying sword, Zhang Yuhe's purple spirit had already arrived. Puff! Zhang Yuhe's tiny mouth opened once again, and a flash of purple sword light shot out, striking right onto the mist that was blocking the flying sword. That flash of sword light was the sword intent of the purple spirit that Zhang Yuhe had refined. It was usually used to nourish the purple spirit, and its sharpness was no less than another purple spirit, easily piercing right through the mist. The messenger flying sword immediately flew out of the gap at an incomparably fast speed. Quickly chase after that flying sword. Hearing the cultivator's order, Zhang Yuhe sneered. She knew that once the flying sword message was sent out, it would immediately merge with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Unless the cultivator was 2 realms higher than her, there was no way to stop it. Moreover, the flying sword message already had her image. Even if she and her sister had an accident and couldn't escape this cultivator's attack, the Huan country Xinjiang sect would be able to find this place based on the flying sword message. Where do you think you're going? The cultivator shouted and raised his hand. A 1-meter-long rope flew into the air. Under the control of the cultivator's spiritual energy, it immediately turned into a 3-meter-long dragon. It roared and moved its body, baring its fangs and claws as it chased after Zhang Yutong. At the same time, the bewitched cultivator also flew into the air and followed the little dragon in pursuit of Zhang Yutong. Lu Weigang hesitated for a moment. He took out an array flag and waved it. A faint red cloud appeared under his feet and flew towards Zhang Yuhe. At the same time, he waved the array flag again, and several pieces of mist appeared in front of Zhang Yuhe, blocking her escape route. Seeing Lu Weigang chase after her and the array flag in his hand, Zhang Yuhe knew that she had fallen into his array. Lu Weigang's cultivation was not as good as hers, but with the help of the array, she was afraid that she would be in danger. Therefore, she didn't intend to fight with Lu Weigang. Seeing many clouds appear in front of her, she clenched her teeth and slapped her forehead. From Zhang Yue's forehead, a purple sword light shot out from her Naiwan palace and flew to the front of the purple spirit sword. This sword light was 3 times thicker than the purple spirit sword. At the same time, Zhang Yuhe leaned forward and made a gesture with her hands. Her whole body spun like a top and pierced towards the clouds like an awl. The purple sword light that Zhang Yuhe had just shot out was at the forefront of the awl. With a sizzling sound, the cloud was indeed as sharp as a piece of metal. Moreover, it was extremely viscous, and it stuck Zhang Yuhe's entire body. A large expanse of purple light emerged from the point of contact between Zhang Yuhe's head and the clouds, dyeing the surrounding clouds. The brilliance of the light dazzled Lu Weigang, who was chasing after Zhang Yuhe. He couldn't help but raise his arm, wanting to shield his eyes. However, the purple brilliance was so domineering that even if he closed his eyes, the purple brilliance would still remain in his heart. Lu Weigang channeled his spiritual power, and a burst of brilliance flashed around his body. The purple brilliance also dimmed. When Lu Weigang scanned the clouds, he saw a gap the size of a person in the clouds. Zhang Yuhe had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1647. Just as Sect Master expected, Lu Weigang saw that Zhang Yuhe was about to escape, but there wasn't the slightest bit of frustration on his face. He sneered as he waved the array flag in his hand. A thick, viscous, dark red fog gushed out from the array flag and filled the gap between the clouds. Once the thick fog merged with the clouds, the dark red fog immediately turned into threads of red, just like blood threads. It quickly dyed the surrounding air, and as Lu Weigang continued to wave the array flag, countless clouds appeared out of thin air. Moreover, these clouds were all dark red, completely different from the faint white clouds just now. Zhang Yutong saw that the cultivator's magic power was unfathomable, and he had a magic treasure to protect himself. She immediately thought of retreating and parted ways with Zhang Yuhe. After all, there were only 2 people blocking their path. In comparison, Lu Weigang's cultivation was lower than theirs, and they were both sword cultivators. One of them would definitely be able to escape. Seeing that the cultivator had abandoned Zhang Yuhe and was chasing after her, Zhang Yutong felt relieved and made a decision. Zhang Yutong's sword light was extremely fast, and after flying for a short while, he saw a few white clouds appear in the sky. He immediately understood that this was a formation set up by the enemy. He immediately made a decision and flew downwards. Of course, he had only flown a few hundred feet when he was blocked by the clouds again. This time, Zhang Yutong didn't dodge. Like Zhang Yuhe, she spat out a strand of sword energy from her mouth. Her entire body leaned on the flying sword, and it spun as it flew towards the clouds. The attack power of a sword cultivator was indeed strong. Like Zhang Yuhe, Zhang Yutong broke through a gap in the formation set up by Lu Weigang and the others. Just as she was about to escape like Zhang Yuha, the cultivator in the camouflage robe arrived. Just like Lu Weigang, the cultivator waved the spell flag in his hand, and an even redder fog hit the clouds in the sky. However, Zhang Yutong's flying speed was too fast, and the surrounding clouds were dyed red in the blink of an eye. Moreover, outside these clouds, even more blood-red clouds rapidly appeared, blocking Zhang Yutong's path. Seeing that she was about to escape, Zhang Yutong was secretly delighted. However, an extremely strong resistance appeared in front of her. It wasn't very strong, but it was very tough. Zhang Yutong's flying sword only pierced a foot or so before it seemed to be stuck. Zhang Yutong tried to use her magic power several times, but to no avail. She looked around and was blocked by the red clouds. She knew that things were not good. She withdrew her body and stood in the air, coldly looking at the cultivator. "Young friend Zhang, what do you think you're running to?" The cultivator stopped and asked with a smile. "Elder," Zhang Yutong said with a cold face, "why are you blocking my way back to Huan country?" "It's nothing. This old man just wanted to invite young friend Zhang to our humble sect for a chat." Although my sword cultivator disciples have some relationship with cultivator disciples, it is far from as close as Senior thinks. Also, I have an urgent matter to attend to back to Shin Sword Sect. If Senior doesn't have anything else, please open this array and let me out. Then, I will pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, Zhang Yutong said with a cold smile. The cultivator raised his head and laughed wildly. "Otherwise what? My sister's flying sword message has already been sent out, and the images here have also been sent out. If Senior opens the array, I will just treat it as a misunderstanding and let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, my Shin Sword sect will invite the sword cultivators of Huan country to come find me. At that time, there will be a conflict between the sword cultivators and the Dao sect. Then your sect, when the nest is destroyed, there will be no eggs left intact." Hearing Zhang Yutong's threat, the cultivator seemed to be in deep thought. Then, he said calmly, "Could it be you think that your flying sword message will definitely be able to reach Shin Sword Sect? That your twin sister of yours will definitely be able to escape from my hands?" Zhang Yutong said with a smile, "Of course, I already know that my sister is out of danger. Moreover, that flying sword message is definitely not something that you Dao sect people can intercept." That's good." The cultivator laughed instead of being angry. He pointed his finger, and the rope that was chasing Zhang Yutong stopped not too far away. Then, it roared and rushed towards Zhang Yutong. Zhang Yutong didn't understand the cultivator's reaction. Seeing the rope flying towards her, the mana around her body froze. She pointed her finger, and the flying sword under her feet flew out. It also roared and rushed towards the dragon formed by the rope. The flying sword was like lightning, and the dragon was wreaking havoc. The two of them fought against each other, and it was very exciting. When Zhang Yutong controlled the flying sword, she stole a glance at the mysterious cultivator. Unfortunately, not only was the cultivator in the illusion, his whole body was also covered by the golden light of the golden bell. She couldn't see his true face. Quick! When Zhang Yutong saw that there was a trace of stagnation in the twisting of the dragon, she couldn't care less about whether it was a trap or not. She lightly scolded and pointed her hand. The green spirit's sword quickly drew a line in the air, like a nimble dragonfly in the water. It slashed at the waist of the dragon. Suddenly, the dragon deflated and was beaten back to its original form. A rope that had been cut in two fell from the sky into the thick blood-red fog. "Good. You are indeed a sword cultivator." One sharp sword is equivalent to 10 kinds of magic tools. The cultivator was not angry. Instead, he laughed and clapped his hands. Let me experience Senior's magic power." Zhang Yutong was a little confused when she saw that she had broken the opponent's magic tool. At the same time, she became more courageous. She pointed her finger, and the green spirit sword stabbed at the mystic demon cultivator's protective golden light like a snake. Clang! Sure enough, a few sparks burst out, and the green spiritual sword was blocked by the golden light. Zhang Yutong narrowed her eyes and was about to use her magic power when she saw Lu Weigang behind the cultivator with the array flag in his hand. "You stand aside. Be careful of this girl escaping." The cultivator didn't look back and ordered loudly. "Yes, Secmaster." Lu Weigang greeted and flew behind Zhang Yutong with the array flag in his hand. "Secmaster?" Zhang Yutong heard this, and her heart thumped. She didn't care about Lu Weigang's sect, but needless to say, it was definitely one of the 13 cultivation sections. Moreover, it was one of the most famous sects in the 3 cultivation countries. His sect master was naturally the head of the sect. Since it was the head of the sect, then the cultivator in front of her must be a nascent soul cultivator. But since he was a nascent soul cultivator, why did he have to use such a troublesome method? With just a wave of his hand, she wouldn't have any power to fight back. Zhang Yutong was instantly confused. "Let's fight." Zhang Yutong gritted her teeth and pointed her finger. The green spirit flew back to her. Zhang Yutong opened her mouth and sucked it into her mouth. Then, Zhang Yutong held a mysterious seal with both hands and slapped it on her forehead. With a whoosh, a green sword aura flew out of Zhang Yutong's Naiwan palace. Then, Zhang Yutong opened her mouth and the green spirit flew out again. This time, the green spirit's color was 3 times thicker and more verdant. Once the green spirit flew out, it rushed into the air and merged with the sword aura. "Go!" Zhang Yutong shouted softly. The green spirit stretched out and stabbed at the golden light shield of the cultivator. Poof! This attack pierced a small hole in the light shield. Zhang Yutong's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion. She knew that even though she had used a secret technique to condense all the sword chi in her body and forced out the sword chi, she was still far from being able to break through the defenses of a nascent soul cultivator. No, even a golden core cultivator would not be able to do so. But at this time, she didn't have time to think about the reason. Seeing that she had pierced a small hole in the light shield, she immediately urged the green spirit to stab at the light shield crazily. In just a few breaths, there was a crack, and the green spirit broke through the light shield. The green spirit's shadow flashed and entered the light shield, suddenly stabbing at the chest of the cultivator. The cultivator obviously didn't expect the green spirit to break through his defense. His body flashed and turned into a few shadows in the air, trying to avoid the flying sword that was close to him. Unfortunately, the attack power of a sword cultivator was unparalleled, especially when it came to close-range flying swords. The green spirit was like a bolt of green lightning. When it couldn't pierce through a shadow, it suddenly turned around and flew toward the cultivator. In the blink of an eye, it pierced through several shadows. The cultivator seemed to be a little anxious. He waved his hand, and a dozen ice talismans condensed into an ice wall in front of the flying sword. Crack! Crack! There seemed to be no suspense. When the ice wall came into contact with the green spirit, it was immediately shattered. However, in this short time, the cultivator clapped his hand and a 4-colored light flashed from his left hand. It was a triangular shield. The cultivator activated his magic power and placed the shield in front of him. Before the shield could expand, Green Spirit had already flown in front of him. With a pung sound, Green Spirit pierced into the shield. Whoosh! A series of lights bloomed, and the shield blocked the Green Spirit. Go! Seeing this, Zhang Yutong, who was not far away, had a trace of desperation on her face. She gritted her teeth again, and a burst of bright red flashed across her face, followed by a snow-white complexion. Zhang Yutong's sword technique changed again, and the green spirit suddenly became slender, like a green silver needle. With a soft sound, the green spirit actually pierced through the shield and pierced into the cultivator's body. A few flashes of light flashed on the cultivator's body. It was clear that the restriction protecting his body was pierced. Ouch! The green spirit actually injured the cultivator. It flew out from the cultivator's back, and a trace of blood immediately dyed the cultivator's waist red. However, at this moment, just as joy appeared on Zhang Yutong's face, Zhang Yutong's vision turned dark, and she fell from the sky. Chapter 1648. Zhang Yutong used a sword cultivation secret technique to fight against the Miho cultivator. She used up all her spiritual energy and fell from the sky. Her delicate body floated down like a green leaf. In the thick blood mist, a mysterious blood shadow appeared. The blood shadow waved its hand, and a scarlet-yellow talisman fell on Zhang Yutong's forehead. Then, a blood-red brilliance flashed from Zhang Yutong's body and deeply enveloped her. Zhang Yutong's body stopped in the air, and the blood shadow flew into the blood mist and disappeared. Then outside the blood mist, Lu Weigang and the Miho cultivator appeared. "Secmaster, good move," Lu Weigang said respectfully as he looked at the huge blood mist in the air. His eyes flashed with a look of fascination. This is nothing," the Miho cultivator lightly said. "My heavenly demon sect has endless methods. This is only a little spell, nothing much. As long as you follow my sect, not to mention the golden core stage, even the nascent soul stage will be within reach." "Thank you, Sect Master, for helping me." Lu Weigang bowed and saluted. "Ever since my injuries were healed by Sect Master, and I received Sect Master's benevolence to raise my cultivation level to the foundation building realm, I've admired Sect Master from the bottom of my heart. Joining the Heavenly Demon Sect is my sincerity. Vice Sect Master Lu, it's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Your Changbai sect is a famous sect, but you haven't reached foundation establishment yet. What future do you have in the Changbai sect? Our Heavenly Demonic Sect is now recruiting disciples. Now that you've become the Vice Sect Master of our Heavenly Demonic Sect, not only will your cultivation not stagnate, but it's also possible for you to become a Grandmaster in the future," the Miho cultivator said with a smile. "Disciple thanks Sect Master," Lu Weigang said respectfully. "Okay, go and capture Zhang Yutong. I'll have a use for her in the future. Go back with the other disciples and cultivate well. Try to reach core formation as soon as possible." The Miho cultivator took out a formation flag and waved it in the air. The blood mist was quickly sucked into the flag. Soon, the sky became clear again, and the flag was covered in blood. "Disciple will return now." Lu Weigang bowed and flew into the air. He grabbed Zhang Yutong in his hand. At the same time, 4 or 5 cultivators in the 7th layer of Qi refining appeared from the ground. They bowed to the mystic demon cultivators and flew away with Lu Weigang. After everyone left, the Miho cultivator looked around and left as well. After flying for 2 hours, he landed on a cliff and found a cave and went in. Sword cultivators were indeed sword cultivators. Just one flying sword could move unhindered between heaven and earth. Amazing indeed. Even though this old man is at the middle stage of foundation establishment and has a secret magic treasure, I was still injured by her. That Mi Lu cultivator said in a low voice. He removed the Mi Lu, revealing white teeth and red lips. An incomparably handsome Zhang Qingxiao had appeared. At this time, Zhang Qingxiao's Taoist robe was stained with blood. It was caused by Zhang Yutong's flying sword. After Zhang Qingxiao changed her clothes and took a pill, she sat down cross-legged and thought to herself, "Fortunately, I pretended to be an expert and coaxed the 2 sword cultivators to run away as soon as they met. If the 2 of them fought together, even if I could capture them, I would have injured them. The middle stage of foundation establishment is still nothing." Then Zhang Qingxiao took out another pill and swallowed it, and began to cultivate diligently. Far away in the country of Xi, in a place surrounded by clouds and dangerous mountains and rivers, a cultivator in the same Miho appeared in the air. This cultivator was holding a 1-foot large disc in his hand. He looked at the disc and shouted, "Huh? Why did the thunderbolt of the Imperial Thunder sect change direction again? After hearing the cultivator's words, the scenery in the air 100 feet away twisted and two cultivators appeared. The two cultivators flew closer and took a closer look. They were also surprised and said, "Marshal Uncle Xiong, this is already the second time we've changed directions. The Imperial Thunder sect. Did they discover us? How is that possible?" The other cultivator who flew together retorted, "Marshal Uncle Xiong set this up in advance without anyone knowing. How could the Imperial Thunder sect cultivators know? Moreover, this place is not too far from the Imperial Thunder sect. Even if they want to take precautions, they would not expect us to ambush here. Don't say any more. Quickly pack up the disc and other things. Hurry up and rush forward." Marshal Uncle Xiong pointed his hand and put away the disc. The other two disciples flew to different places and put away more than 10 discs in the air. Then, they followed the cultivator and flew forward. After flying for another day, Marshal Uncle Xiong took out the disc and cast a spell on it. He looked carefully and scanned it with his divine sense. He pointed at a place and said, "It's here. Quickly set up the formation." "Yes, disciple." The two disciples were busy setting up the formation. Marshal Uncle Xiong looked into the distance for a long time. After a while, the two disciples finished setting up the formation and flew in front of Marshal Uncle Xiong. Marshal Uncle Xiong scanned with his divine sense and smiled. Not bad. Although the Imperial Thunder sect changed direction twice, it did help the two of you. You've become more skilled at setting up the formation." One disciple respectfully said, "This is all thanks to Marshal Uncle Xiong's guidance." Another disciple asked softly, "Marshal Uncle Xiong, on the thunder-controlling sect's thunderboat, besides Jin Qing, there's also Jin Yu, a foundation establishment cultivator. I'm afraid the three of us won't be able to handle it." "Hee, you don't have to worry about that." Marshal Uncle Xiong pointed and said, "This formation is set up to restrict spiritual power. Even a golden core cultivator's cultivation will be reduced by 30%. Also, we're just taking back the storage bag. I'm sure Imperial Thunder sect's Jin Qing will know what's good for him." "Yeah, I didn't expect Fan Tong to be such a good-for-nothing. He had a magic treasure, but was killed by Xiao Hua." The disciple agreed. "We were wrong to choose him to take the storage bag back to the Changbai sect. We didn't choose him. It was the Changbai sect's Taoist, Jing Si." Marshal Uncle Xiong sneered. "This Fan Tong is the descendant of Taoist Jing Si. He has a magic treasure given to him by Taoist Jing Si. Because of this magic treasure, Fan Tong should have won at the Feather Immortal Gathering. Who would have thought that, even if he died, he would still bring along the storage pouch that we gave to Taoist Jing Si? Naturally, the items in this storage pouch would be taken away by the Imperial Thunder sect. But, Marshal Uncle Xiong, we don't know if the storage bag is in the hands of the Imperial Thunder sect or the Changbai sect. If it's in the hands of the Changbai sect, then the storage bag will naturally be presented to their sect leader. Fan Tong is the descendant of Taoist Jing Si, and he's an elder of the Changbai sect. The storage bag will naturally fall into his hands. Why do we have to worry about it?" Marshal Uncle Xiong sneered. "If it's in the hands of the Imperial Thunder sect, then we just need to capture Xiao Hua and take the storage bag away." "Marshal Uncle Xiong, I think that the storage bag must be in the hands of the Changbai sect. After all, I've seen the things in the storage bag. Liao Zhouquan won't let the things in the storage bag fall into the hands of the Imperial Thunder sect." Another disciple said with a smile, "Are you sure? What if it's not?" Marshal Uncle Xiong said in a low voice, "The sect leader sent us to do this, and we made such a mistake. Although it's not our fault, if we can't fix it, we'll be the ones to suffer losses. So we have to confirm it." Yes, I understand," the disciple quickly said. "And quickly go hide." Marshal Uncle Xiong waved his hand. "When the Imperial Thunder sect's thunderboat enters the formation, I'll hold Jin Qing back. You two hold Jin Yu back and capture Xiao Hua. Although Xiao Hua has some tricks up his sleeve, he's just a child in your hands. He killed Fan Tong and offended Taoist Jing Si. Even if we can't get the storage bag from him, we still have to kill him. After all, we need Taoist Jingxi's help. We understand. The two bowed, turned around, and hid in the formation. Martial Uncle Xiong held the formation plate in his hand and carefully looked at it. After Xiao Hua left the thunderboat, Jin Xing was also somewhat vigilant. After all, Xiao Hua's words made some sense. However, after flying for 2 days, the thunderboat didn't encounter any abnormal situation. When Jin Xing released her divine sense, she was already somewhat disdainful. She secretly complained about Xiao Hua's suspicions. She felt that Xiao Hua, who was a rogue cultivator, was making a mountain out of a molehill. The disciples on the thunder ship already felt that Xiao Hua had other ideas. Now, they were even less vigilant. However, on a sunny day, Li Xiao and the others were standing too far away from the sun, smiling and talking about something. Suddenly, the entire thunder ship came to a stop. Then, it fell straight down from the sky. Everyone was caught off guard. They felt the true energy in their meridians stagnate, and 30% of the magic power in their bodies was eliminated. Their bodies fell with the thunder ship. Jin Xing's figure paused for a moment. Then, her figure floated in the air. With a wave of her hand, the flute appeared in her hand. Taoist Jin. Martial Uncle Xiong, who was wearing a camouflage robe, walked out of the formation. His hands were empty, and he didn't have any magic tools. He smiled and said, "I have something to discuss with Taoist Jin." As he spoke, there were 2 disciples who were also wearing a camouflage robe. One of them rushed towards Jin Yu, who had already stabilized himself in the air. The other released his divine sense to search for Xiao Hua. Jin Xing coldly snorted and released her pressure. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on Martial Uncle Xiong. Taoist Jin. Martial Uncle Xiong was still smiling. He also released his pressure. Boom! The 2 forces of pressure collided. Previously, there was a strong gust of wind that soared into the sky. Jin Xing's expression changed slightly. She slapped her hand, and her magic tool flew into the air. Not to mention, one disciple went to meet Jin Yu. The other disciple was stunned when he scanned with his divine sense. Among the dozen or so qi refining disciples, there was no trace of Xiao Hua at all. Chapter 1649. The mesmerized disciple scanned the area again with his divine sense. Sure enough, he couldn't find Xiao Hua. Releasing his spiritual aura, he casually covered a refinement stage disciple and easily captured him. Then, he whispered, "If you want to live, tell this old man honestly. Where did Xiao Hua of your Imperial Thunder Sect go?" That disciple was Min Ge. He had no power to fight back against this cultivator. When he heard the question about Xiao Hua, he quickly replied, "Senior, please no. Xiao Hua left the Thunderboat a few days ago. As for where he went, we don't know." "What? He left the Thunder Ship a long time ago." The cultivator was shocked. He didn't let go of Min Ge and flew into the sky. "Quickly, put down my Imperial Thunder Sect disciple." Jin Xing had already seen this cultivator flying toward the Thunder Ship. She was furious. She took out her magic treasure and prepared to attack Martial Uncle Xiong. At the same time, she released her pressure to suppress the cultivator. How could Martial Uncle Xiong let Jin Xing succeed? He had already blocked Jin Xing's aura when she was halfway there. However, when Martial Uncle Xiong scanned the area with his divine sense, he saw that the Imperial Thunder Sect disciple's face wasn't the same as the one in the Flying Shadow message. At this moment, the cultivator quickly told Martial Uncle Xiong that Xiao Hua wasn't on the Thunder Ship. Martial Uncle Xiong's expression changed greatly. He stared at Jin Xing for a moment and cupped his hands. "Fellow Taoist Jin, I misunderstood. I'm sorry." As he spoke, he flew up and waved his sleeves. A dozen spots in the air flashed with a faint light. A dozen formation plates appeared and flew into Martial Uncle Xiong's sleeves. When the cultivator who was confronting Jin Yu saw this, he also gave up on Jin Yu and flew to Martial Uncle Xiong's side. "This old man has offended you. If there is a chance in the future, I'll tell fellow Taoist Jin the details." Marshal Uncle Xiong flew into the distance and said, "This old man has some things to ask about this disciple. I'll let him go in a moment. If fellow Taoist Jin doesn't want to cause more trouble, then wait here." The other two mesmerized disciples looked at each other. They also used their escape techniques and flew away after Marshal Uncle Xiong. Jen Qing's expression was indescribable. She stared at the three of them for a long time. Her flute also slightly shook in the air. Marshal Uncle Jin. A moment later, Jin Yu and the others also flew to Jen Qing's side. Their faces were filled with indignation as they pointed their fingers and said, "Which sect is this bastard from? They actually set up an ambush here? What? Jin Yu, do you want to chase after him?" When Jen Qing heard this, a cold smile appeared on his face. He raised his hand, and the flute landed in his hand. "Disciple doesn't dare." Jin Yu awkwardly said, "The cultivator I'm facing is also a foundation establishment cultivator, and his cultivation is even higher than mine. The other cultivator must also be a foundation establishment cultivator. Our Imperial Lightning sect's dozen or so chi refining cultivators have no power to fight back. If this disciple were to chase after them now, wouldn't it be like striking a rock with an egg?" "Okay." Jen Qing nodded. She tilted her head slightly and looked into the distance. She snorted and said, "Prepare the thunderboat. We will return to the Imperial Thunder Sect at full speed." "Yes, I understand." Jin Yu bowed respectfully. He drove the lightning boat under his feet and shouted to the surrounding disciples, "Get on the lightning boat." When Sun Shu and the others landed on the thunderboat, Min Ji's soulless figure appeared in the distant sky. "Mingo, what do they ask you?" Jin Qing waited for Mingo to come closer and asked in a low voice. "This." Mingo took a deep breath and said, "They asked me where Xiao Hua went." "Xiao Hua. It really is Xiao Hua." Jen Qing's expression changed slightly. Her eyes shone brightly. "How did you answer them?" "Yes, Master Ancestor knows. I said that Xiao Hua left alone after entering the country of Shi. As for where he went, I don't know." Mingu smiled apologetically. "Did they ask for the location?" "Yes, they did, and they asked in detail. Did they give themselves away?" Jen Qing knew it was useless, but she still asked. Mingu smiled bitterly. "I didn't even dare to look at them for fear of angering them. If they gave themselves away, how could I come back?" Then he clapped his hand and took out a medicinal pill. "When I came back, they gave me a foundation establishment pill as compensation for disturbing me." "Oomph. You keep it well." Jen Qing snorted and walked to the front of the Thunder Ship's formation plate. She urged her magic power and drove the Thunder Ship towards the Imperial Thunder Sect. In the distance, Marshal Uncle Xiong brought two disciples and flew towards the place where Xiao Hua left the Thunder Ship. While flying, he instructed the two, "Release your divine senses and search carefully." How could Xiao Hua know that there was an ambush ahead? Even Jin Qing couldn't know. This Mingu is interesting. He actually has a grudge with Xiao Hua. When we asked him one question, he actually said 10 sentences. He can't wait for us to find Xiao Hua and strangle him to death. He's quite tactful. Marshal Uncle Xiong sneered. "I originally wanted to kill him. Since he's willing to work for us, why don't we leave him alive? After all, our target is Xiao Hua. Marshal Uncle is wise." The two disciples praised. Thus, the two foundation establishment cultivators and one golden core cultivator released their divine senses and searched the edge of the weeping moon abyss again and again. Unfortunately, no matter how they searched, they couldn't find any trace of Xiao Hua in the vicinity of the weeping moon abyss. Because when Xiao Hua got off the Thunder Ship, he immediately used the hibernating Thunder Escape and flew back in the direction the Thunder Ship came from. After flying for several days, he arrived at the place where the Thunder Ship first turned around and followed the route Jin Qing prepared for the first time. After flying for another day, he saw a beautiful place. He plunged into the ground and used the Earth Escape technique to burrow into the ground. Only when he couldn't burrow any further did he stop. He took out the Devil Spear and dug a space the size of a person underground. After sitting down cross-legged, he took out a soul-gathering pill and swallowed it. Xiao Hua actually began to cultivate in this underground space. As for that martial Uncle Xiong, after searching the Weeping Moon Abyss for a long time and not finding any trace of Xiao Hua, he also came to a realization. He followed the Thunder ship's route again and searched for more than 10 days. There were several times when they flew over the place where Xiao Hua was cultivating. They also used their divine senses to scan the ground, but unfortunately, they didn't look down. Guessing that the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had already returned to the Thunderclap Peak, Marshal Uncle Xiong and the other two didn't dare to stay for long. They hurriedly searched one last time before flying away in disappointment. There weren't any large cities nearby, and there were no transportation formations. They couldn't figure out where Xiao Hua went no matter how they racked their brains. After Marshal Uncle Xiong and the others left, Xiao Hua raised his cultivation to the mid-stage of the 12th level of the refinement realm underground. Only then did he emerge from the ground. First, he released his Buddhist sense and looked around. Then, without saying anything, he withdrew his Buddhist sense and used the hibernating thunder escape to fly in the direction of the Imperial Thunder Sect. On this day, Xiao Hua flew to a place with beautiful mountain scenery. He didn't plan to stop and was about to fly past it. But at this moment, Xiao Hua frowned slightly and stopped. He lowered his head to look at a place densely covered with thorns in the mountain col and muttered in a very strange voice. Based on my Buddhist sense, this call seems to be different. It's actually some fluctuations of spiritual power. However, as Xiao Hua slowly flew closer, he couldn't see anything strange about the thorny area with the naked eye. Strange. Xiao Hua was very curious. With a wave of his hand, he released Zheng Chun and used it to protect himself. Then, he flew a little closer to the place where the thorns were. When he used his Buddhist sense to investigate again, he really did see some clues. His Buddhist sense was admittedly very observant, but he actually saw some faint tremors in the thorns. These tremors weren't caused by the mountain wind, but by something in the thorns. What is it? Xiao Hua took out the black iron needle again and pierced it towards the thorns like lightning. Just as the black iron needle was about to pierce the thorns, a strange ripping sound came from the thorns. A spirit beast with a thin body and 6 claws on the 4 sides of its body flew out from the thorns. Seeing the same color as the thorns gradually disappear from the back of the spirit beast and gradually become translucent, Xiao Hua couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Lizard beast? Without waiting for him to finish shouting, the lizard beast had already moved its almost transparent flesh and flew towards the distance at an extremely fast speed. Just as the lizard beast flew into the forest, the color on its back immediately turned into a mottled tree color and disappeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Aha! This young master has been looking for this thing for a long time. I didn't expect to encounter it here. Xiao Hua had always wanted to refine an invisibility talisman. Unfortunately, he also knew that the blood and fur of the lizard beast were extremely difficult to find, so he always wanted to find an opportunity to exchange for it at EG. But he never thought that he would actually encounter a rare lizard beast here. Seeing the lizard beast disappear, even if he used his divine sense, he couldn't find it. Xiao Hua was not anxious. He released his Buddhist sense and slowly searched around. Sure enough, in the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua found traces of the lizard beast on a big tree in the distance. What should I do? At this time, Xiao Hua didn't simply want to kill the lizard beast, but wanted its fur and flesh. The lizard beast was a first-rank spirit beast. Its strength was only equivalent to the Qi refinement stage. For the current Xiao Hua, it could only cause a little trouble. If Xiao Hua used the Fireball Talisman or the Devil Spear Tip, he could kill it, but this might damage the lizard beast's fur and affect the refining of the invisibility talisman. Thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. With a wave of his hand, he took out the suppressing cloud seal and urged his spiritual power. Under Xiao Hua's urging, the suppressing cloud seal quickly turned into a 4-qi-long seal and quietly flew in the air above the lizard beast. At this time, the lizard beast seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. It let out a strange, tearing sound and flew out from the big tree. Its whole body turned in the air and flew toward Xiaohua. Moreover, the lizard beast's trace gradually disappeared in the air as it flew. Chapter 1650. Huh. This lizard beast was actually born with an escape technique? Seeing the lizard beast gradually disappear from midair, Xiaohua's Buddhist sense clearly saw an azure brilliance flash in the place where the lizard beast disappeared. Would escape. The name of the escape technique jumped out of nowhere in Xiaohua's mind. Moreover, the spell seals were like a gurgling stream flowing clearly in his mind. Excellent. Xiaohua almost clapped his hands. No wonder very few people were able to catch this lizard beast with only Qi refining cultivation. It turns out that this thing is naturally proficient in wood escape techniques. Today, I should be fated. Not only did I recall the wood escape technique, I even ran into this lizard beast. I'm afraid this invisibility talisman will be very easy to obtain. In a moment, Xiaohua formed a spell seal. His entire body flashed with azure light, and he chased after the lizard beast. That lizard beast was very timid. Seeing that Xiaohua was actually able to catch up to it, it had long been flustered. It fled to the east and fled to the west, gradually losing its order. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to chase after it. At first, he was somewhat unfamiliar with it. The speed of the wood escape technique wasn't fast, but after the time it took to smoke a cigarette, his figure also gradually began to become nimble. The wood escape technique became increasingly proficient. Of course, Xiaohua's mind was also active. The first step of cultivating the light escape technique is the most difficult. Not only do I have to cultivate the 5 types of escape techniques, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, but I also have to temper my bones with 7 colors. The most difficult part is still finding the 5 elemental origins and tempering them into my bones. As for where to find the 5 elemental origins, I have no clue at all. Fortunately, I've already recalled the wood escape technique, fire escape technique, and earth escape technique. As for the metal escape technique and the water escape technique, I don't know whether I've cultivated it or not. If I haven't, I still have to pay attention. However, didn't I still cultivate the lightning escape technique in the Imperial Thunder sect? I wonder if this lightning escape technique can be considered one of the 5 elemental escape techniques. Unfortunately, this light escape technique is too unimaginable. I can't reveal it to anyone. I can only occasionally inquire about it. Master is only a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, and his lightning evasion technique has yet to reach the great accomplishment stage. I'm afraid he knows very little about these things. Asking him would be pointless. While he was thinking, the lizard beast in front of him changed again. The lizard beast was running around like a headless fly, but all of a sudden, it seemed to have discovered something, and its figure suddenly turned to the left. Xiaohua naturally didn't pay attention to it, and he also turned around. However, after flying for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the lizard beast's flat body turned slightly, and it actually disappeared without a trace from Xiaohua's Buddhist sense? Xiaohua stared blankly. Thinking about how his cooked duck had actually flown away, he was very ashamed and angry. He activated his escape technique and arrived at the place where the lizard beast had disappeared. When he looked carefully, he saw that it was an incomparably large tree. That huge tree stood at the bottom of a cliff. Could it be that the entire tree was at least 1,000 feet tall? The width of that huge tree was also several tens of feet. The entire huge tree crown covered a large area of about 1,000 feet below the cliff. Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense and divine sense, and separately looked at the huge tree, but he didn't see anything wrong. Could it be that the lizard beast used another escape technique? But that shouldn't be the case. It can't just disappear, Xiaohua thought, and his hand formed a seal to escape into the huge tree. Under the cyan brilliance, the inside of the huge tree was incomparably dark. Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense with all his might, examining inch by inch, wanting to find some clues. However, Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense had just entered the door, and it was only at the first layer. How could he really observe? In fact, Xiao Hua also had some doubts about the cultivation of Buddhist sense. First of all, in terms of cultivation methods, whether it was raising fire to the heavens, heavenly laws embodiment technique, or even boundless thunderbolt, these cultivation methods all used medicinal pills as the foundation and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth as the foundation. In the end, they absorbed external objects for one's own use to increase one's cultivation. However, this exquisite leaf Sutras Buddha Sarira cultivation method purely used one's own bitter efforts to temper the Buddha's golden body bit by bit, without relying on any external force. Thus, there were no so-called medicinal pills to take. Secondly, Xiao Hua understood from the exquisite Leaf Sutra that this cultivation method was the Buddhist sect's supreme cultivation method of Sarira cultivation. Logically speaking, although Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira quantity couldn't compare to frost bamboo's, its quality definitely wouldn't be inferior. But why did frost bamboo completely disdain Xiao Hua's Buddhist cultivation method? Did he say that Xiao Hua's cultivation method was relatively coarse upon meeting? Xiao Hua had the heart to ask these questions that day, but he didn't understand frost bamboo, so he didn't dare to ask. If frost bamboo really wanted him to take out the exquisite Leaf Sutra for reference, would he take it out or not? In fact, Buddhist and Taoist sects were different. Taoist sects paid particular attention to harmonizing with heaven and earth, stealing the great Tao of heaven and earth for one's own use. It was the most skillful. On the other hand, Buddhist sects focused on the Sarira as one's will, and they cultivated the most painstakingly. The exquisite Leaf Sutra didn't rely on external objects and only relied on one's own strength. It was superior, while frost bamboo borrowed Taoist sects' medicinal pills to cultivate Buddhist awareness, which was inferior. Naturally, Buddhist awareness was different from divine sense, and it emphasized impurity the most. There was a Buddhist gatha as proof. Bodhi is not a tree. A mirror is not a platform. Buddhist awareness is not an object. How can it attract dust? When Buddhist awareness was cultivated to the extreme, it would be like a cool breeze blowing through the boundless universe, and no one would be able to detect it. It was far from the powerful divine sense of Taoist sects. Thus, when Xiao Hua cultivated the exquisite Leaf Sutra, his initial Buddhist awareness was like clear water, and his starting point was very high. It was far from what frost bamboo could compare to. Xiao Hua used his Buddhist awareness to scan again and again, and at the place where the lizard beast disappeared, there was suddenly a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation. This spiritual energy was different from the spiritual energy fluctuations that Xiao Hua usually saw. Instead, it was filled with a kind of deathly stillness and a kind of tyranny. This spiritual energy fluctuation is somewhat familiar. It seems to be similar to when the spatial array in my storage bag was crushed by the great wisdom sword. Xiao Hua frowned and thought to himself, seeing that the spiritual energy fluctuation was becoming more and more intense. A thin crack gradually appeared in the space. Xiao Hua hurriedly took out the cloud-suppressing seal, but soon after, when the thin crack was the width of a finger, it gradually fused together. Go! Xiao Hua didn't hesitate and pointed his finger. The cloud-suppressing seal flashed with a bronze brilliance and smashed towards the crack. Pung, pung, pung. 4 times in a row, the crack was actually smashed to the point where it stopped fusing. Then, it gradually enlarged, and when it was about 3 feet wide, a faint shadow flashed through the crack. Xiao Hua smiled, and the sealing power of the cloud-suppressing seal was released, completely suppressing the lizard beast that just came out of the crack. Hiss! The lizard beast struggled with all its might. Its flat, almost transparent body suddenly turned dark red, and then it swelled up again. Go! Xiao Hua knew that the lizard beast was going to counterattack, so he didn't dare to be negligent. He urged the cloud-suppressing seal and smashed it down. With a pu sound, blood flashed, and the lizard beast was actually smashed back into the spatial crack. This! Xiao Hua slightly frowned. His figure flew and arrived in front of the crack. His Buddhist awareness swept inside, and he unconsciously froze on the spot. Behind the spatial crack was an independent space with a radius of 1 zhang. However, this space was already on the verge of collapse. The edges of the space were covered in a misty blue brilliance. The misty blue brilliance was like boiling water, quickly surging and shrinking towards the spatial crack. The lizard beast's corpse fell in midair. Next to the lizard beast's corpse, there was a human-shaped corpse with its head raised towards the sky. However, this corpse had long been reduced to white bones. Its 7 orifices were pitch black and looked very frightening. Moreover, the corpse's right arm was straight and slanted towards the sky. Its index finger and middle finger were closed together. Although the finger bones were already white, when Xiao Hua's Buddhist awareness swept over it, there was actually a kind of feeling of fear and shock spontaneously arising. Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He couldn't restrain the astonishment in his heart. This corpse was covered in Confucian attire from top to bottom. It was completely different from what ordinary cultivators wore. It was even different from the attire of some scholars among cultivators. Could it be this senior isn't a cultivator? Xiao Hua's heart gave birth to such a thought for no reason. Rumble, a burst of faint vibrations. Not good. This space is going to collapse. Xiao Hua's heart was alarmed. He didn't have time to think anymore. His divine sense swept over and collected the lizard beast's corpse and blood into a jade box and jade bottle. At this moment, the space shook. The scholar's corpse was shaken and flipped over. The other hand behind the corpse's back was revealed before Xiao Hua's eyes. Between the 5 fingers was actually half a tortoise shell. What is this? Xiao Hua beckoned with his hand. Unexpectedly, the tortoise shell didn't move in the slightest. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. Soon after, he stretched his hand into the spatial crack and grabbed the tortoise shell. Come on! Xiao Hua exerted force with one arm. A faint red light flashed above the scholar's corpse. Crash! A series of chaotic sounds rang out. Xiao Hua was holding the tortoise shell in his hand, but the bones of the entire corpse had already collapsed. So much so that, as the white bones scattered, those white bones turned into ashes. It seemed that too much time had passed. I've sinned. This greatly exceeded Xiao Hua's expectations. Xiao Hua shook his head. The white bones turned into ashes. The scholar's robe floated in the air, emitting a faint red light. Xiao Hua didn't stop there. He beckoned with his hand, and the scholar's robe flew into his hand. At this moment, another strange scene appeared. Under the scholar's robe, a thumb-sized heart object was revealed. That heart object flashed with an extremely pure red light as it floated in the air. It dyed the entire space red. What is this? Xiao Hua was astonished. However, at this moment, an aura of extermination came from within the space. The boiling green light on the walls of the space suddenly stopped. On the contrary, the spatial crack that had expanded a lot just now rapidly shrank at this moment. The space is going to collapse. Although Xiao Hua hadn't seen space collapse before, that aura of extermination couldn't be wrong. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He swung the tortoise shell in his hand. That bright red heart object fell on the tortoise shell. Xiao Hua hurriedly withdrew from the spatial crack. Xiao Hua's arm had just retracted when the spatial crack completely closed. A trace of grayish-black brilliance flashed at the crack. The faint fluctuation of spiritual energy just now disappeared without a trace. Chapter 1651. That was close. Seeing this, Xiao Huan knew that the space had been completely annihilated. If he hadn't encountered the lizard beast and chased it all the way here, then luckily discovered the spatial crack and obtained the Confucian robe, tortoise shell, and red heart-shaped object, these things would have turned into ashes just like the corpse and would no longer exist in this world. Soon after, Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the scholar robe in his hand. At this time, the scholar robe had returned to its original white color and no longer emitted any red light. Presumably, The red light from before was emitted by this red heart-shaped object. Since the scholar's corpse had turned into ashes and the scholar robe hadn't changed, this scholar robe must be a unique treasure. Although Xiao Hua couldn't find any clues with his Buddhist sense and divine sense, he still carefully stored the scholar robe in his space. Looking at the tortoise shell, it wasn't complete. It was probably only 20% of the complete tortoise shell. At this time, under the red light of the heart-shaped object, it appeared transparent. Faintly, within the transparent shell, there were some shadows that seemed to be words, but also didn't seem to be words. Xiao Hua looked at it for a long time, but he still couldn't find anything. He sighed in his heart and stored the heart-shaped object and the tortoise shell in a separate place with the scholar robe. After that, Xiao Hua jumped out of the giant tree and took out the map Jin Qing gave him. He carefully looked at it. Although the lizard beast had been running for a long time, it didn't deviate too far from its original location. Xiao Hua identified the direction and used the wood escape technique that he had just recalled. He flew toward the Imperial Thunder Sect. It wasn't just a day. Xiao Hua was like a fish back in water as he hid in the forest. Two valiant divine senses swept across his body and immediately locked onto him. Io, could it be those thieves? Xiao Hua was slightly startled and secretly thought. However, when he released his divine sense, he found out that the divine sense was very strong. It was a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. How could it be the thieves chasing after Jin Qing? Xiao Hua happily escaped from the forest and respectfully saluted while flying in the air. He said, "Are you the masters of the Imperial Thunder Sect? Are you Xiao Hua the Thunder Sect?" The two figures hadn't arrived yet, but the sound transmission had already arrived. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This disciple is. May I know if the two masters are the martial uncles of the Imperial Thunder Sect?" "Haha, it's our luck. Of the two late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivators, one has a black face and the other has a thin figure." The person with the black face shook his hand and sent a signal to the sky. Soon after, he smiled at Xiao Hua and said, "This old man is Jin Feng from Jianlei Palace. This is my junior brother, Jin Jiadao." Disciple greets the two martial uncles. Xiao Hua bowed again. Jin Jijuan slightly nodded his head and waved his sleeve, stopping Xiao Hua from saluting. He asked softly, "Martial nephew Xiao, have you encountered any enemies?" Xiao Hua shook his head. Disciple Tao Zhiyao Yao wouldn't dare to reveal the slightest bit of cloven foot. "I was lucky enough to escape." "Great." Jin Feng clapped his hands and said. The moment Junior Martial Uncle Jin Qing arrived at the Jianlei Palace, he immediately ordered all the disciples to move out and welcome Junior Martial Nephew Xiao. "We've been searching for a few days and haven't found any trace of him. We thought that this matter couldn't be settled peacefully. Who would have thought that I would run into Martial Nephew, just as I was about to return? All the disciples on duty?" Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He rolled his eyes and asked, "Martial Ancestor Jin, are they all safe?" He, with Martial Ancestor Jin, escorting them. How could anything happen to them? Jin Feng smiled and said, "If you're not injured, then follow us back to the mountain. We can use the lightning escape technique to bring you back." "Yes, thank you for your trouble," Xiao Hua said with a smile. Soon after, the two late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivators used the lightning escape technique to bring Xiao Hua back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. During this time, more than 10 late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivators also rushed over and escorted a middle-stage Qi refining realm cultivator back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Seeing that so many late-stage Foundation establishment realm cultivators were sent out by Jin Qing to search for him, Xiao Hua was grateful but also worried. Needless to say, Jin Qing must have encountered the thief who wanted to stop the Imperial Thunder Sect. Moreover, he must have fought with the thief. Although Jin Qing wasn't injured, he definitely didn't gain any advantage. Thus, he mobilized so many people to search for him. Who is the thief who stopped the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples? What is their goal? This was what Xiao Hua was thinking along the way. At the same time, it was also what Jin Qing asked when they met. In the side hall of Jianlei Palace, Jin Qing's expression was rather gloomy. Although he didn't make a move against the cultivator who appeared out of nowhere, his face was completely destroyed. The joy of seeing Xiao Hua safe and sound couldn't wash away his doubts. He didn't quite understand why a gold core stage cultivator would be interested in Xiao Hua. Or was he interested in the pills that Xiao Hua won? Seeing Jin Qing's expression, Xiao Hua also felt guilty. He took out his storage pouch and handed it over. Smiling apologetically, he said, "Disciple can't recognize all of these pills. Martial Ancestor, please take a good look and see if there's anything wrong with them." And Jin Qing didn't hold back. Previously, because these pills were Xiao Hua's personal belongings, it wasn't convenient for him to check them one by one. However, now that it was too important, he couldn't hold back anymore. However, after looking through all of the pills, Jin Qing's eyebrows tightened. He handed the storage pouch back to Xiao Hua and shook his head. "These pills are indeed precious, but you can't let a golden core stage cultivator face me directly. What about the best quality spirit stones?" Hee, that's even more impossible. Jin Qing still smiled bitterly. Not to mention 10% spirit stones. Even 100% spirit stones can't compare to these pills. Could it be the sword embryo? Xiao Hua probed. AI, it can only be the sword embryo. Jin Qing's eyes flashed with an indescribable brilliance. After thinking about it, I feel that it can only be the sword embryo. But the sword embryo, Disciple felt that only the weight was special. I couldn't see anything else. Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and took out the great wisdom sword that he just put into the storage pouch. Not to mention you, I also couldn't see anything when I looked at it just now. If you want to find any clues, you still have to ask the palace masters or elders of the 8 great lightning palaces to take a look. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He reluctantly handed over the great wisdom sword and said with a forced smile, "Then, Disciple will give this sword embryo to Grandmaster. May Grandmaster." Unexpectedly, Jin Qing flicked his sleeve and said with a smile, "You can take it yourself. Right now, I have already reported it to the palace master. He is also quite interested in it. You just wait. Perhaps there will be an order coming soon." Xiao Hua secretly rejoiced. While speaking, Jin Qing stretched out his hand and took out a storage pouch from his bosom. He handed it over to Xiao Hua and said, "Your storage pouch is about to be crushed by the sword embryo. You should quickly put the pills and spirit stones into your own storage pouch. Take this storage pouch first and use it to temporarily store the sword embryo." Xiao Hua took it with a smile. "Grandmaster is still the most considerate." "Thank you, Grandmaster." Not long after, a boy came to summon Xiao Hua. Following Jin Qing, Xiao Hua came to a large hall. This hall had an extraordinary aura. The carved beams and painted pillars were golden and dazzling. It was comparable to the great lightning hall of the Heavenly Lightning Palace. The horizontal board above the hall had the 2 words Xiaolei. At this moment, there were 2 people sitting on the left and right of the Xiaolei hall. Xiao Hua had seen these 2 people in the Great Lightning Hall before. They were the Palace Master of the Great Lightning Palace, Jin Sheng, and the Palace Master of the Great Lightning Palace, Dui Jie. After Jin Qing and Xiao Hua went forward and bowed, Jin Sheng said with a smile, "Xiao Hua, I didn't expect you to cultivate from the 10th layer of the Qi refining realm to the middle of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm in just a few years after joining my Imperial Lightning Sect. Furthermore, you even won glory for my Imperial Lightning Sect in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Not only did you get into the top 32, but you also used a magic treasure to force a disciple who had completed the Qi refining realm of the Qi refining realm to enter the Foundation establishment realm on the spot. Even this old man couldn't compare to your spirit when I was young." Xiao Hua hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your praise, Palace Master. I only managed to gather all the ingredients. If I didn't get that incomplete magic treasure, and if I didn't have the time to refine it, how could I be a match for a disciple who had completed the Qi refining realm? It's because you gave up for the sake of the big picture that you were able to seize this opportunity. Everything is destined by karma," Jin Sheng said with a smile. Dui Jie, who was at the side, said with a smile, "What makes me most gratified is that you actually made the two disciples who had completed the Qi refining realm of the Qi refining realm from the Huanhua sect fight against each other. You really made my Imperial Lightning sect proud." This is bad, Xiaohua suddenly thought. These days, I've only been thinking about avoiding interceptions. I've never thought about how Fairy Hongxia would deal with herself when she returns to the Huanhua sect. Poor Xiaohua. Ever since Fairy Hongxia said, "Since you've made up your mind, I'll follow your will." Whenever he thought of Fairy Hongxia, his heart would be filled with sweetness. Why would he think so much? If Dui Jia hadn't mentioned it, he wouldn't have known. Seeing the slight change in Xiaohua's expression, Dui Jia was secretly amused. She waved her hand and said, "You don't have to worry. That Fairy Hongxia has completed the Qi refining realm at such a young age. She must be someone that the elders of the Huanhua sect value highly. Such a small matter won't affect anything." She then pointed her hand and said with a smile, "On the other hand, you, Xiaohua, are only in the middle of the 12th level of the Qi refining realm. Although you stood out in the Feather Immortal gathering and soared to the sky, to be honest, it was all due to the power of your magic treasure. It has little to do with your cultivation level. If you want to marry into the Huanhua sect, you have to pass the foundation establishment stage." Xiaohua's face was slightly red. He lamented that women were meddlesome and had nothing to do with their cultivation level and age. He also bowed and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Palace Master. All right, Xiaohua, take out the sword embryo and let me take a look." Jin Sheng waited for Dui Jia to finish her nagging before he waved his hand and said, "Yes." Xiaohua took out the Great Wisdom Sword from his storage bag. Jin Sheng waved his hand, and the Great Wisdom Sword in Xiaohua's hand did not move at all. Is it really so strange?" Jin Sheng raised his eyebrows and activated his magic power. Unfortunately, he changed a few spells in a row, but the Great Wisdom Sword still did not move. Dui Jia was also surprised. She also used a few spells that were different from Jin Sheng's. Xiaohua could feel a huge force coming from the air a few times. He wanted to grab the Great Wisdom Sword, but he was always unsuccessful. Strange. Bring the sword embryo over. Jin Sheng had no choice but to order. Chapter 1652. Although the Great Wisdom Sword was incomparably heavy, Jin Sheng was a late gold core stage cultivator and could still lift it up. However, when he looked at it and then passed it to Dui Jia, both of them shook their heads slightly in the end. Jin Sheng returned the sword to Xiaohua and smiled bitterly. "Xiaohua, even with my experience and knowledge, I am unable to determine the origin of this sword. Only the sect leader and the other elders would be able to tell. However, the sect leader and the elders have been very busy recently. I'm afraid we can't trouble them with such a small matter." Dui Jie chimed in from the side. "Moreover, since the Tai Ching sect took this out as a reward, they must have appraised it themselves. Even if it's a miraculous item, its use is probably limited. According to my guess, those bastards must have found a use for it that we don't know about." Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat, and he said respectfully, "Of course, Yin Guichong of the Huanhua sect swore to take this item. Could it be the cultivators of the Huanhua sect who stopped us?" "Haha, Jinxing has already thought about this and has already sent disciples to investigate. If it's them, as long as the Imperial Thunder sect has the evidence, we can't let the Huanhua sect go." Jin Sheng laughed thought-provokingly. "All right, Xiaohua, your results in the Feather Immortal Assembly are very good. The Thunder sect and the Thunder sect should have rewards too. They have already been given to your helpless master. It's also hard for you to escape from your enemies. You should return to the Myriad Thunder Valley as soon as possible. The Feather Immortal Assembly is just a small episode. It's an experience and a beginning. I'm sure you have seen many disciples building their foundations. I hope you can learn from it and cultivate diligently. You can enter the foundation building realm as soon as possible." Jin Sheng said with a smile. "Thank you for your encouragement. I will remember it and enter the foundation building realm as soon as possible. Xiaohua bowed and followed Jin Qing out of the Thunder Sect Hall. After bidding farewell to Jin Qing, Xiaohua saw that there was no one around. He used the hibernating thunder escape and flew towards the myriad Thunder Valley. When Xiaohua arrived at the 10,000 Thunder Valleys cave, the cave was completely silent. There was no movement at all. Even the mountain ape had disappeared without a trace. Why is that? Xiaohua didn't dare to release his divine sense to explore his master's cave. He just landed in front of the cave and shouted, "Master, I'm back." However, no one responded to him even after he shouted twice. Maybe it's not in the cave. Xiaohua thought to himself. He was just about to go look for his eldest senior martial brother Xiangyang, but he had a second thought. When he left the Imperial Thunder Sect, he gave his eldest senior martial brother the mother-child spirit fruit. So he didn't know whether Xiangyang had already broken through the bottleneck and entered the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Seeing that his sister-in-law, Yin Qinglian, hadn't come out to greet him, presumably he was still in closed-door meditation. If he went over now, he would probably disturb his eldest senior martial brother's cultivation. Presumably, Xiaohua was sitting cross-legged and waiting outside the cave. Now that he had finally returned to the myriad Thunder Valley, Xiaohua felt a sense of stability in his heart. At this moment, his mind once again entered the space. The things inside the space were now in an orderly manner. Spiritual grasses, spirit stones, artifacts, magic weapons, and the like were all placed in different categories. Everything seemed to be under Xiaohua's control. However, when Xiaohua's consciousness swept over the eggs of the Iceworm King and the water-patterned butterfly, he couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Logically speaking, how many years had it been? The medicinal age of the spiritual herbs should be thousands of years. For some reason, these eggs didn't have the slightest movement. However, if they were all dead, Xiaohua could feel exuberant vitality from within the eggs. This is extremely strange. Xiaohua smiled. Then, he looked at the roots of the rainbow epiphyllum. Ever since he picked the fruit of the rainbow epiphyllum, an extremely beautiful 7-colored flower had actually grown out of the roots. This flower was in the shape of a rainbow and was very tender and beautiful. It looked exactly the same as the rainbow on the rainbow epiphyllum's fruit. If that's the case, I won't lack the rainbow epiphyllum in the future. Xiaohua secretly laughed. Mother, Little Yellow called out. Carrying Little Silver on its back, it flew into the air and cried out excitedly. Are we going to fight again? Boy still hasn't had his fill just now. What's the fight this time? Just now? Xiaohua's mind was greatly shaken. The last time he had Little Yellow and Little Silver come out to help was at the Feather Immortal Assembly. Counting on his fingers, if it wasn't several months, it would be at least several dozen days. How could be just now? Xiaohua remembered that when he first asked Little Yellow, it was in this space that time passed very slowly. However, Little Yellow couldn't explain it clearly. Xiaohua only thought that it was because the light was hanging in the air and there was no reason for the night. Now that he thought about it, it probably wasn't that simple, right? Naturally, Xiaohua thought of the insect egg that hadn't moved for a long time. What about the divine power centipede? Has it recovered? Xiaohua's heart stirred, and he asked again, Divine power centipede? Oh, Mother, are you talking about the one that boy defeated? Little Yellow's intelligence was even more mature. Yes, it's that one. It's called the Divine Power Centipede, Xiaohua said with a smile. Boy just brought it in. How could it have recovered? Little Yellow actually asked Xiaohua in return. In fact, when Xiaohua asked Little Yellow, he had already looked at the Divine Power Centipede lying motionlessly on the ground. The Divine Power Centipede had been scratched all over by Little Yellow, and it was lying there on the verge of death. Although its life wasn't in danger, it looked like it wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. Thinking about the time difference between the space and the outside world, it would probably take a very long time for him to use this thing. Moreover, at that moment, Xiaohua thought of something else. Spirit pets had to be controlled by cultivators. Just like magic artifacts and magic treasures, there were different ways to control them. Of course, there were some ways to control spirit pets and the secret techniques he had obtained from the spirit husbandry sect, but he didn't know if they were suitable for him. Should I take this divine power, centipede out, and raise it? Xiao Hua thought to himself, but he immediately denied it. Putting aside the fact that he didn't have a spirit storage bag, just thinking about Little Yellow's extraordinary spirit energy and Little Silver's considerate manner, he knew that although time passed slowly in this space, it definitely had an effect on the growth of spirit pets that the outside world couldn't. Suddenly, Xiao Hua's mind shook as he sensed some movement outside. He hurriedly pulled his mind out of the space, only to see that it was already dark outside. A familiar divine sense swept over him in the distance. It was Master's wife, Zhuo Minghui. Zhuo Minghui was still a distance away when she said telepathically, "Xiao Hua, when did you come back?" Xiao Hua also replied telepathically and respectfully, "This disciple just came back today." He, very good. As she spoke, Zhuo Minghui was already close to him. Without waiting for him to stabilize himself, she immediately used the thunder light telepathic technique to inform him. Then, she opened the cave and let Xiao Hua in. After sitting down, Zhuo Minghui looked at Xiao Hua very kindly and asked, "Is everything all right?" Xiao Hua bowed and said, "This disciple is fine. How could those bastards catch me? Master's wife, please don't worry." Zhuo Minghui smiled with relief and said, "When your master heard that you took the initiative to leave the thunderboat outside, he scolded you for being stupid and wanted to search for Jin Lei Palace in a rage. However, when he saw that martial Uncle Jin Qing had already sent out many experts to search for you, he knew that they were doing their best. Although he wanted to go out with them, he couldn't leave Myriad Thunder Valley after all, so it wasn't up to him. Actually, this disciple also had no choice." Xiao Hua briefly explained the matter. Zhuo Minghui nodded and said, "Your master also knows about this. He has always said one thing and meant another. You have to know." As she spoke, she helplessly scanned with her divine sense. How come you're so fast?" Zhuo Minghui was greatly surprised. She stood up and said. When Xiao Hua followed Zhuo Minghui out of the cave, Helplessness's figure was already in sight. Xiao Hua bowed and said respectfully, "Master, this disciple is back. Bah, you can still come back." Before Helplessness arrived, his scolding arrived first. "You're just showing off. You're only in the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, a middle stage disciple. How dare you come down from the thunderboat alone? If you don't want to live, you should have told me earlier. I'll expel you from Myriad Thunder Valley first. Don't let the other disciples of Lightning Palace point at my back and curse me if something happens to you. My Myriad Thunder Valley already has Xiangyang. It's fine if I'm a coward, but if I have a hothead like you, my reputation will be ruined by the two of you." Helplessness scolded without any reason as soon as they met. Xiao Hua felt wronged. He knew that this was Helplessness' style, but he still sighed. "All right, let's hurry back to the cave." Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, "Why did you come back so quickly? It seems that my lightning sound transmission hasn't reached Myriad Thunder Valley yet. I felt that something was bothering me, so I came back to take a look." Helplessness rolled his eyes at Xiao Hua, then raised his head and entered the cave. Zhuo Minghui smiled and gave Xiao Hua a look, then followed him in. A warm current flowed through Xiao Hua's heart. Needless to say, Helplessness was definitely thinking about him and came back to take a look. Coincidentally, he really did come back. Perhaps this something bothering him had already happened many times during the dozens of days he was away. Looking at Xiao Hua, who was sitting obediently at the side, Helplessness sighed. He patted his hand and took out a storage pouch. He threw it into the air where Xiao Hua was and said unhappily, "This is the reward from Jin Lei Palace and my Jun Lei Palace. There's also your Eastern Ridge Medicinal Gardens Command Medallion. Take it." Yes, Xiao Hua accepted it and tied it around his waist without even looking. "Hee, you've set your sights higher." Helplessness sneered and said, "The rewards from the two great lightning palaces aren't cheap. Even I covet it, but you don't even look at it. Why don't you let me take a look at what you won?" Let me broaden my horizons. What is so precious that it actually made a golden core cultivator fight for it? Master, it's useless even if you look at it. It's all pills. There's none of the Ling 1 grass that Master wants. Xiao Hua said, and respectfully handed the storage pouch to Helplessness. Helplessness looked at the items inside, and his expression changed. He then passed it to Zhuo Minghui and stared at Xiao Hua. Is this really 10%? Yes. Disciple personally took out 90% of the items in the storage pouch to return to Changbai sect. Helplessness sighed and said, in the end, I'm still a loose cultivator. My cultivation is too low. Master, Disciple, felt that since I've already killed Changbai sect's disciples, wouldn't it be a waste if I didn't take it? Either way, it's a disaster. Xiao Hua said innocently. Damn it, I said, you took too little. Helplessness said angrily, you should at least take 30%. No, 50%. I've been in Imperial Thunder sect for so many years, and I've never gotten so many pills. Chapter 1653. Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh when he heard Helplessness's words. He didn't just want 50%, he had it all in his hands that day. Unfortunately, he was only a 12th layer Qi refinement cultivator. He couldn't face the Taiqing sect and Changbai sect alone, even with the help of all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. He had to give way. In that situation, even Helplessness, who was in the late stage of Foundation establishment, would have to give way. Xiao Hua smiled and slapped his forehead with his hand. The cloud-suppressing seal transformed into a foot-sized seal and flew out. A bronze brilliance appeared inch by inch, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed into illusory flowers that could be seen clustered around the seal. Helplessness's eyes flashed, and he pointed his finger. The Buddha Surura outside, Xiao Hua's mud pill palace shook, but to Helplessness's surprise, the cloud-suppressing seal didn't fall from the sky, let alone fly into his hand. Xiao Hua saw this, and quickly cut off his connection with the cloud-suppressing seal. The cloud-suppressing seal gradually shrank and flew into Helplessness's hand. Your method of refining magic treasures is quite strange. Helplessness smiled and picked up the cloud-suppressing seal to examine it. Master, this is the magic treasure Disciple exchanged for with 90% of the pills and spiritual stones. What do you think? Xiao Hua smiled apologetically. My Imperial Thunder sect has plenty of this kind of trash. Helplessly and mercilessly attacking Xiao Hua, he also said casually, right now, your most important task is to increase your cultivation level. These external objects are merely decorations. Once your cultivation level reaches Foundation establishment in Jindan, what magic treasures can't you have? Yes, Disciple understands. Xiao Hua saw that Helplessness raised his cultivation again and quickly said, Disciple won't go out again this time. When I find a suitable cultivation method, I will immediately go into seclusion. I won't come out until I reach the end of the 12th layer and Foundation establishment. Yes, that's the right way. Helplessness released his divine sense and looked at the cloud-suppressing seal again. He had already thrown the words he said about sending Xiao Hua to the Feather Immortal Gathering to win glory out of the window. Master's wife, Disciple has no use for most of these pills and spiritual stones. If there's anything you want, Disciple will give it to you. Xiao Hua said respectfully to Zhuo Minghui. These pills are all precious. You should keep them for yourself. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Minghui, I've seen the pills inside. There are a few that you and I can use right now. This is Xiao Hua's filial piety. If we don't use it now, who knows how long it'll take for him to use it. We'll just return it to him when the time comes. Helplessness raised his head, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew. There's nothing special about this magic treasure. Masters his wife's wife, as have Aza's wife's wife. S's have Aza's wife's wife. That's right, Master's wife, said Xiao Hua. Why don't you take it and use it for eldest brother and sister-in-law as well? However, when Xiao Hua saw that by Xiao Chun's expression had changed, he said, Master, Show. Helplessness said softly. This magic treasure is a bit strange. Wait a moment. Zhuo Minghui also found it strange, but she still smiled. Masters. After he finished speaking, he took out some medicinal pills for late-stage foundation establishment cultivators from his storage bag and returned the bag to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took the bag of holding and heard Zhuo Minghui say, Xiaohua, your bag of holdings formation seems to be about to collapse. Masters. There's no need, Xiaohua said hurriedly. Masters' Jin already gave me one. I haven't had time to exchange it yet. With that, he took out Jin Xing's bag of holding and put the pills and spiritual stones inside. The Prajna greatsword was still inside. Xiaohua held his breath and looked at helplessness. After the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, he withdrew his divine sense and frowned, as if he couldn't understand something. Master, Xiaohua whispered, this magic treasure, is there something wrong with it? Take a look. He handed the cloud-suppressing seal to Zhuo Minghui helplessly, but Zhuo Minghui looked at it for a while and shook her head. I can't see anything. It seems to be no different from an ordinary magic treasure. It's not the magic treasure's power, but the magic treasures. How should I put it? Xiaohua, take out this magic treasure and smash it at your master's wife. It's not appropriate. Xiaohua shook his head. Just smash it when I tell you to. With your little cultivation, can you really hurt your master's wife? She glared at Xiaohua helplessly. Fine. Xiaohua was helpless. He waved his hand, and the cloud-suppressing seal flew out from Zhuo Minghui's hand. Xiaohua activated his magic power, and the cloud-suppressing seal suddenly expanded, turning into a seal 5 feet in size. It carried with it an endless power and a frightening power of imprisonment. It smashed towards Zhuo Minghui. Ayo, that's right. This magic treasure is a little strange. Zhuo Minghui's expression changed slightly. She pointed her finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal spun in the air. It stopped for a moment, but then it suddenly sank and smashed down again. Rise! Xiaohua saw Zhuo Minghui's expression change. How could he dare to smash it down? He pointed his finger, and the cloud-suppressing seal shrank to 3 inches in size and flew back into his hand. After putting away the cloud-suppressing seal, Xiaohua nervously asked, Master, what's wrong with this cloud-suppressing seal? Did the Changbai sect do something to it? Ha ha ha, you little brat. Your luck is really good. This magic treasure, TSK, to tell the truth, even I don't know what's strange about it. I'm afraid even the Changbai sect won't be able to do anything to it. Xiaohua was even more confused. He was like a monk scratching his head in confusion. He respectfully said, Master, please explain. Zhuo Minghui pursed her lips and said, How can your master explain it clearly? The strangeness of this magic treasure has nothing to do with the cultivation of our sect. Xiaohua was shocked. His eyes quickly turned. He got this cloud-suppressing seal from the Changbai sect's fan tong. How could it have nothing to do with the sect? Ayo, Xiaohua suddenly remembered. He cultivated the dragonization art in his meridians, so he couldn't put the cloud-suppressing seal into his dantian. He put the cloud-suppressing seal into his dantian like the sword pill and the small fight. That's where the Buddha's heart is. Is there something strange? You don't have to be afraid. Xiaohua, this is a good thing, not a bad thing. Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, The strangeness of your magic treasure seems to have something to do with the Buddhist sect. If I say too much, I won't be able to explain it clearly. Simply put, in the Buddhist sect, cultivators like us all have karma. This karma is something that Buddhist cultivators have to get rid of in their lifetime. As long as you get rid of the karma, you can cultivate a true body. Of course, the people of our sect don't care about this. However, when we ascend, we also have to go through heavenly tribulation. The principle should be the same. Looking at Xiaohua's confused appearance, she helplessly waved her hand and said, Minghui, you don't even understand what you're saying, so how can Xiaohua understand? You only need to tell him that there seems to be a slight trace of karmic fire tempering on his magic treasure. With this thing, as long as he has karmic hindrances on his body, his divine power will be reduced by 30% in front of this magic treasure. Master, what is karmic fire? Xiao Hua was even more confused. How would I know? I only encountered this kind of situation when I was training with your master's wife in the early years. Because the other party's cultivation wasn't that high, but we didn't have the power to fight back. When we returned to the sect, we asked many people. Later, a nascent soul stage elder guest and told us. Xiao Hua helplessly rolled his eyes and said, although your magic treasure doesn't have that kind of power, the meaning is the same. Your master was once bitten by a snake for 3 years, so he immediately discovered something wrong. Zhuo Minghui pursed her lips and said with a smile, karmic fire tempering? Xiao Hua secretly pondered. The Buddhist light in the heart of the Buddha Saraira was 9 colors. At first glance, it really looked like a ball of fire. Could it be karmic fire? Xiao Hua guessed. Oh, that's right, master. Xiao Hua was afraid that if he was asked too many questions, he would have no choice but to answer some of them. So he hurriedly changed the topic. He wanted his master to take out the Tai green light rod from the Tai green light rod. But just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, he suddenly realized something. Helplessly, he only wanted to increase his cultivation level, so he didn't have any other distractions. If this strange magic weapon was sneered at, then there was no need to mention the Tai green light rod. What? Xiao Hua asked helplessly. Xiao Hua's mind turned, and he said with a smile, Master, don't you want to hear how I displayed great power in the Feather Immortal Assembly? Great. Xiao Hua clapped helplessly and said, tell me about it. I haven't had such fun in a long time. Zhuo Minghui stood up and brought some spiritual fruits over. Xiao Hua ate 2 mouthfuls, cleared his throat, and recounted what happened in the Feather Immortal Assembly. Naturally, these words weren't all true. Xiao Hua only said what he could, and said it in a lively manner. When he heard it, he beamed with joy and cheered. On the other hand, Zhuo Minghui's face was full of worry. She rejoiced that Xiao Hua was able to stay alive in the midst of so many late-stage 12th layer qi refining cultivators. When Xiao Hua said that he forfeited, Xiao Hua sneered helplessly and said, don't hide it from me. This kind of thing, how can I not know? You probably have some misgivings. Maybe it wasn't your original intention? Xiao Hua nodded and said, Master, you really know your disciple's heart. He repeated what Jinyu said. Out of Xiao Hua's expectation, Xiao Hua didn't slam the table and stand up this time. He just looked at Zhuo Minghui and said with a bitter smile, this is also your bad luck. Why did you have to meet a female disciple of the Earth Thunder Palace? Xiao Hua also rolled his eyes and said curiously, Master, you're wrong. Which disciple who can enter the top 32 is weak? I'm afraid that most of them are from the Qinquan Palace and the Qinquan Palace. All right, I don't like to listen to this kind of thing. Let's talk about something more straightforward. Xiao Hua waved his hand with an unhappy expression. Yes, Xiao Hua understood the helplessness in Xiao Hua's heart and started talking about the fight for the great wisdom sword again. Xiao Hua was originally wondering why Xiao Hua was so brave and could actually defeat a disciple who had reached the peak of qi refining. However, after seeing his magic treasure just now, he already understood. Now, he wasn't as happy as before. Hearing that Fairy Hongxia was actually fighting against her own senior brother for Xiao Hua, Zhuo Minghui's face was full of worry. Xiao Hua, how are you going to explain this to Xue Xue? Right at this moment, a delicate voice was heard outside. Xiao Hua, you still have the guts to come back. You come out. Chapter 1654. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat when he heard the angry reprimand. Do I need to overthink? Isn't it Xue Xue who chased after me? Actually, Xiao Hua didn't know what he was thinking about Xue Xue. It would be a lie if he said that he didn't like her. How could Xiao Hua not be pleased with such a charming female cultivator who cared about him both openly and secretly? How could he not have other thoughts? But what was worse was that he was thinking about Fairy Hongxia. Their relationship wasn't clear before, so it was still fine. However, at the Feather Immortal Gathering, Fairy Hongxia looked back and smiled. Her resolute words directly connected the two of them, who had nothing to do with each other. Xiaohua didn't know how to face Shui Shui. Xiaohua, why aren't you leaving? Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, when you were at the Feather Immortal Gathering, Shui Shui came to the Myriad Thunder Valley a few times. Then she added, the first time, she was almost injured by the silent thunder of the Myriad Thunder Valley. Xiaohua's heart warmed. He bowed and said, I'll leave now. After he finished speaking, he stood up and walked out of the cave quickly. Helplessly, he also stood up and was about to follow out. However, Zhu Minghui stopped him and said, why are you going out? I'm going to watch the show. Helplessly, he spread his hands and said innocently, just watch from here. Zhu Minghui waved her hand, and a 3-foot mirror appeared in midair. The situation outside was reflected in the mirror. Helplessly frowned and said, there's no sound, just watching. It's boring. Why? Do you want to learn more? Zhu Minghui sneered and said, are you still thinking about that guy? Helplessly was shocked and quickly waved his hand. Madam, what are you talking about? This is Xiaohua's matter. Why are you implicating me for no reason? Then he pointed at Xiaohua in the mirror and scolded, Xiaohua, that little bastard, how dare he two-time? When he comes back, I'll teach him a lesson. Shut up. Zhuo Minghui coldly humphed. Shui Shui is Marshal Uncle Sun Ming's disciple. She has a boundless future in my Imperial Thunder sect, so she's a good match for Xiaohua. As for that Hongxia fairy, she's already a foundation establishment cultivator at such a young age. She's definitely an outstanding disciple of Huanhua sect. Wui. What's even rarer is that she has deep feelings for our Xiaohua. She's also someone this old woman values, so she's a good match for Xiaohua. Madam, why can Xiaohua do it, but this old man can't? He helplessly muttered. But why would Zhuo Minghui care about him? All right, there's also that girl Xuanshu. She looks pretty good too. Helpless. Meanwhile, Xiaohua had just left the cave and was frowning. He was still pondering how to talk to Shui Shui when suddenly, a sword light flashed in front of his eyes. A flying sword talisman had arrived 3 feet in front of him. Xiaohua was shocked and flew up without thinking. Just as he flew up, he heard Shui Shui angrily rebuke, Xiaohua, you still have the guts to dodge? Xiaohua looked up and saw 2 people standing in midair. One was Xuanshu, who was extremely far away and her expression couldn't be seen clearly. The other was Shui Shui. Her face was flushed red, her eyes were glaring angrily, and her long, shapely eyebrows were vertical. She had a flustered and exasperated appearance. One of her hands was holding a lot of sword talismans, while the other hand was controlling a bright red flying sword, directly stabbing towards Xiaohua's back. Shui Shui, Xiaohua said in a heavy voice. Without waiting for him to say anything, Shui Shui shouted again, you're really unreasonable. You've obviously been secretly colluding with Hongxia Fairy, so why did you still provoke me? Shui Shui, you're the unreasonable one. Xiaohua was slightly angry when he heard this. He said in his heart, everything was delivered to me by yourself. I didn't do anything, right? His mouth answered while dodging the flying sword. What part of me is unreasonable? Shui Shui flew forward a bit and said somewhat miserably, you were originally walking together with Kai Zhuoxia. Although I saw that you were outstanding, I still congratulated the 2 of you in person. But you said it had nothing to do with Kai Zhuoxia. Naturally, I didn't believe it. When Kai Zhuoxia died, I also urged Uncle to let you go. Presumably, you also know that if it wasn't for me, you might not have been able to walk out. What's with all this? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This flying sword chasing behind him was actually nothing to him. Not to mention the suppressing cloud seal. Even a fireball talisman would be broken. But looking at Shui Shui's angry appearance, Xiaohua intuitively didn't dare to do so. But since you've left, don't appear in front of me. When you and I are cultivating on our own and seeking our own fate, it's fine if I don't see you. But you just had to enter the Imperial Thunder sect with me. It's fine if you say your cultivation is profound, but you just had to take care of me. You damn bastard, don't you know? For the sake of such a rare opportunity to enter the Imperial Thunder Sect, who knows how much dirty and scheming, how much scheming and scheming, but you've always been protecting me as I passed the 3 tests. Do you know, if it wasn't for you, how could I enter the Imperial Thunder Sect? Do you know how I miss you in my heart? I cultivate hard every day. I know my cultivation is shallow and can't compare to you. In order to catch up to you, I secretly took a pill behind Master's back. If it wasn't for Senior Sister finding out in time, I almost wouldn't be able to see you again. Do you know? I dragged Senior Sister and Junior Sister to the Thunderclap Palace to listen to the teachings. Wasn't it just to see you? Wasn't it because you were in the Thunderclap Palace? I sent so many sound transmission talismans. Although you replied, it was neither cold nor warm. You didn't even tell me where you were. Other than going to the Thunderclap Palace to find you. Where else could I go to find you? Do you know? Even though I've only seen you once in the Thunderclap Palace, that one time was enough to leave an unforgettable impression in my heart. It allowed me to see hope. However, at the same time, I also know that your cultivation has increased too quickly. I felt a little disappointed. I thought, if I continue to cultivate like this, I'm afraid there will be a day when I can catch up to you. And you will definitely get further and further away from me. So far away that I can't see your back. So far that you won't be able to see my longing in your eyes. So after I sent you to the Feather Immortal Gathering, I suppressed my longing for you. I suppressed my thoughts and stopped thinking about you. I worked hard to cultivate. I wanted to give you a surprise when you returned from the Feather Immortal Gathering. I wanted you to have a good impression of me, lessen my worries, and increase my luck. But I didn't expect that you actually crushed my dreams before you returned. That trace of luck of mine was mercilessly swept away by you. Since you like this, why did you let me meet you? Since you like this, why did you protect me? Since you like this, why didn't you say anything to me directly? If you said it earlier, why would I be so infatuated? Why would I be so concerned about you? Shueishue's voice came one after another. Her voice was like a cuckoo crying blood. Every word was like a heavy hammer that struck Xiao Hua's heart. That's right. How could I not? Xiao Hua was dejected. His flying figure stopped in front of Shueishue. Seeing the redness on Shueishue's face gradually disappear and her face gradually turn pale, Xiao Hua was moved. But at this moment, the flying sword talisman mercilessly pierced through Xiao Hua's shoulder and stabbed into his back. Xiao Hua came out of the cave residence helplessly. He didn't use any yellow talisman on himself at all, so the flying sword talisman easily pierced into his flesh. Seeing this, Shueishue threw away the pile of flying sword talismans in her hand and hurriedly flew to Xiao Hua's side. Her right hand also made a seal at the same time, trying to pull out the flying sword from Xiao Hua's back in a flurry. But the more she tried, the more chaotic it became. The flying sword seemed to be stuck in Xiao Hua's body, not moving at all. Enemy! Shueishue's tears were flowing out of heartache. She shouted, "Why didn't you dodge? Your cultivation is so high. How could my flying sword hurt you? You only needed to dodge lightly. How could I really hurt you? I just wanted to vent my anger and let you know my thoughts. When you said those words, I also gave up. I also won't." Saying this, Shueishue raised her hand and took out a medicinal pill from her storage bag. She hurriedly stuffed it into Xiao Hua's mouth. Seeing Xiao Hua's phoenix eyes like lightning and his eyebrows reaching his temples, her heart was indescribably happy. She hurriedly said, "Humph, I will not come again. I want to see who really likes you. I don't believe that the pavilion closest to the water gets the moon first. My junior sister can't defeat Hongxia Fairy, who is far away in the Washing Flower sect." But looking at Xiao Hua staring at her, Shueishue's face flushed red. She lowered her head slightly, but then Shueishue raised her head again and stared straight at Xiao Hua without flinching. The two people's eyes were intertwined like this. After a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua said coldly, "Is it? Didn't you just want me to say something? Fine, I'll tell you now. This is also what I wanted to tell you when I first joined the Imperial Thunder Sect. But at that time, I thought that you and I were fellow apprentices. If I said it, I'm afraid that we won't be fellow apprentices anymore. So I didn't dare to say it. Since you're here today, then I can only say it. Shue's face was pale. She slightly retreated half a step. Her hands were tightly clenched. Her joints were slightly white, and her entire body was trembling. But even if she was nervous like this, Shue still didn't shrink back. She stiffened her neck and said, "If you want to say it, then say it. But what you said is only what you think. It doesn't represent what I think, and it can't stop what I think. Humph. What I said is naturally my own thoughts. As for what you do, I don't care." Xiaohua sneered and took a step forward. But then he stretched out his arm and hugged Shue's waist. He lowered his head and said gently, "I've always wanted to tell you that I also like you." Saying this, he lowered his head and fiercely kissed Shue's cherry lips. Shue let out a delicate cry. She was caught off guard and was kissed. Xiaohua's strong aura made her feel dizzy. Following that, a strange feeling came from her lips, causing her limbs to go limp. She fell into Xiaohua's embrace. Chapter 1655. Motherfucker. Inside the cave, Xiaohua slapped his thigh helplessly. He wanted to say something, but Zhuo Minghui reached out and wiped away the mirror. She sneered, "What? Do you regret it?" "No." Xiaohua was stunned. "What do I have to regret? If I regret it, it's because I didn't take in a few more disciples like Xiaohua. Even Martial Uncle Sun Ming's disciple. He? I think Sun Shu is better than Shue. Didn't you see Sun Shu's pale face just now?" "What? It can't be, right? How many days has it been since Xiaohua left with Sun Shu?" "It's just..." Xiaohua was surprised. "I just looked at Xiaohua and didn't look at Sun Shu." "Quick, look again. What are you looking at?" "Sun Shu left." Zhuo Minghui snorted. After a short moment, the yellow light in the air outside the cave dissipated. Xiaohua pointed his finger, and the floating dust was absorbed into the space. He looked at the bashful Shue and said with a smile, "My action was superfluous. Master and Master's wife are both in the late stage of foundation establishment. What can they not see?" You knew, yet you still did that in front of others." Shue's face was red, but she still forced herself to say it. "What? You regret it," Xiaohua said with a smile. Shue rolled her eyes and said, "I think it's you who's regretting it, right?" But just as she finished speaking, Shue suddenly remembered and said anxiously, "Oh, I forgot about your wound. Quick, turn around and let me see." "It's not a problem." Xiaohua turned around with a smile. His brand-new Taoist robe was pierced, and the flying sword talisman had turned into a yellow talisman and stuck to his back. There were a few drops of blood on the yellow talisman, which had already dried up. Although a scar could be seen on the tattered Taoist robe, it had already formed a scar. The injury was very light. At this time, Shue simply couldn't think of anything else. She lovingly stroked Xiaohua's wound and said reproachfully, "You're just showing off. Even if you're in the middle stage of the 12th layer, you still have to dodge. What would I do if it pierced another important place?" "If I don't get stabbed, won't you always be angry?" Xiaohua said with a double meaning. "Humph. Don't think that you can get away with it just because I stabbed you with my sword. You better tell me everything about Fairy Hongxia." Shue rebuked. Xiaohua frowned. Hearing that, Shue's face lit up, and she said, "I want to listen carefully and see how you're going to win Fairy Hongxia's heart. Didn't you hear what the disciples who came back from the Feather Immortal Gathering said? That Fairy Hongxia is as beautiful as a fairy, and she's even a Foundation Establishment senior. You're just a chi refining cultivator, yet you're the first to get to her. I'm very curious." Let's wait for the future." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, "Fairy Hongxia, let's talk about this later." I was just casually asking." Shue blinked her eyes and laughed. "I just came back and am talking with Master and Master's wife. Do you want to come in?" Xiaohua looked at the closed door of the cave and said. Shue quickly waved her hands and said anxiously, No, I just came here 10 days ago. Today, I won't be going." senior sister and I. When she turned her head to look, Sun Shu was already gone. Xiao Hua said loudly, Master, I'll send Xue Xue back to the Thunder Palace. I'll be back in a while. Go. Don't come back. You should hurry up and cultivate. You've gained a lot from the Feather Immortal Gathering. You have to comprehend it well. A helpless voice came from the cave. Yes, Master. I'll obey. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and bowed. However, he suddenly thought of something and waved his hand. He took out a jade box from the space, and the jade box flew into the cave. Xiao Hua said, I obtained this during the Feather Immortal Gathering. I don't know if it's to your liking, Master. What's this? Xiao Hua asked helplessly. However, as soon as he said that, he was pleasantly surprised. Xiao Hua could almost see helplessness jumping up from his chair. This, you can even exchange for this thing? Yes, Master. I spent a lot of spirit stones. Xiao Hua smiled and pulled his hand. He held Xue Xue's hand and flew out. Along the way, Xiao Hua and Xue Xue only held hands. Neither of them spoke much. However, what did words count for at this moment? The warmth in their hands had already tied their hearts together. This feeling was too wonderful for words. After flying for a long time, the two of them finally arrived at the Thunder Palace. However, Xue Xue still felt that they were flying too fast. If possible, she was willing to fly back and forth. This was the first time Xiao Hua had come to Sun Lei Palace. Seeing the dazzling flowers in the morning light, thousands of trees competing in spring, hundreds of birds competing in the air, Xiao Hua couldn't help but praise. Your Sun Lei Palace is much stronger than my Jun Lei Palace. Xue Xue pursed her lips and laughed. My Thunder Palace is full of clever and skillful female disciples. Of course, it's beautiful. You're a burly male cultivator. Naturally, you can't compare. Soon after, when they were still some distance away from the Thunder Palace, Xue Xue had Xiao Hua turn around and said, This concubine's cultivation is still at the 9th layer of qi refining. Everything is still unknown. This concubine is already satisfied to know about Jiuanxin. Right now, senior sister Sun is also hiding this from Master. If she finds out, it won't be good. Xiao Hua nodded. He held a soft hand in his hand and said, You can go. We are all cultivators. We are different from ordinary people. You and I are in love with each other. We are looking for an everlasting opportunity. Isn't there a saying? If two people love each other for a long time, why would they be together every day and every night? You and I care about each other. We cultivate together and supervise each other. This is a great joy in cultivation. Wonderful. Xue Xue clapped her hands and said, With a husband like this, what more can a woman ask for? Immediately after, she squeezed Xiao Hua's hand and was about to bid farewell, but Xiao Hua pulled her back again. Xue Xue's face reddened. Just as she was about to lean forward, she heard Xiao Hua say, Right, where is your Thunderstorm Palace's library? Can you take me there? When Xue Xue heard this, she knew she had misunderstood Xiao Hua's meaning. The blush on her face deepened. She asked curiously, Why are you going to my Thunder Palace's library? Xiao Hua looked around and saw that there was no one around. He hugged Xue Xue and lightly kissed her bright and clean forehead. He said in a low voice, This is a little secret of mine. When there is a chance in the future, I will tell you in detail. Xue Xue was admittedly generous, but being so close to Sun Lei Palace and being so intimate with Xiao Hua, she was still reserved. She distanced herself from Xiao Hua a little and nodded. This concubine naturally believes in my dear Xiao. However, I've already brought you there before. If I bring you there again now, I just feel that it's inappropriate. I'm afraid that other martial sisters will see us. The library is just over there. You can go by yourself. Xiao Hua saw that Xue Xue's charming eyes were like silk. Her large eyes were filled with affection. He did not force her. He held her hand and reluctantly bid her farewell. Only after Xue Xue's figure had disappeared did he fly up and fly in the direction Xue Xue had pointed. Dawn was approaching in the east. A golden light was still brewing in the horizon. A pair of red-crowned cranes were flying over from the green hills. Xiao Hua's heart relaxed for no reason. There was a kind of indescribable joy. It was as if this world was suddenly not as lonely as it was on the other side. It was as if this picturesque mountain range had suddenly gained a layer of warmth. In this world, there are people who try to deceive each other and fight to the death. But after all, there is also warmth, affection, kinship, and love. Only in this world can there be a place that I, Xiao Chun, want to go. Xiao Hua's heart was once again filled with determination. But for the things that I can protect in this world, the things that I must protect, I can only do my best to raise my cultivation. The sooner I establish my foundation, the sooner I enter Jindan. Only with great divine power can I have great freedom, can I have great happiness. Thinking about this, Xiaohua could not help but miss Fairy Hong Xia. When she returns to Huanhua sect, will she be punished? If Huanhua sect is harmful to her, what should I do? Hey, where did this disciple come from? This place belongs to Sun Lei Palace. Without Sun Lei Palace's permission, all male cultivators of the outer palace are not allowed to enter. Just as Xiao Hua was thinking, a delicate rebuke came from the distant sky. Xiao Hua hurriedly stopped flying. He raised his head and saw that in the distance, in the clouds, 2 female cultivators of the 11th layer of Qi refining were standing in front of a palace. They were looking at him coldly. Junior sisters, I am Xiao Hua of Sun Lei Palace. This time, I have come to Sun Lei Palace to read the cultivation methods of the library. I hope you can make an exception. As Xiao Hua spoke, he handed over his waist token and sect master's token. Xiao Hua, a female cultivator wearing a green robe, frowned and said in a low voice, I seem to have heard this name from somewhere. The eyes of the other female cultivator wearing a purple robe lit up. She smiled and said, I know. Did you just return from the Feather Immortal Assembly? Xiao Hua was stunned and said inwardly, it can't be. Could it be that all the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect know? Right, I also remember. You are the male disciple of Sun Lei Palace who made that junior sister of Huanhua sect change sides at the last minute. The woman in green also came to a realization and said while slapping her forehead. However, the woman sized Xiao Hua up a few times, feeling somewhat baffled. Everyone says Xiao Hua has an incomparable temperament, a handsome appearance, and a cultivation base at the peak stage of the aura refining realm. But why are you so unremarkable? Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and handed over his token and sect master's token again. He reminded, I have something to do in the library. Junior sisters, please inform me. Library? Where do you have to enter? You're not a disciple of my Sun Lei Palace? The female cultivator in purple said unhappily, I have the sect master's token. You should take it to the teacher on duty to take a look. Xiao Hua handed over the sect master's token and waist token to the two of them. The two of them glanced at each other. The woman in green said, wait a moment. Not long after, an early-stage foundation establishment female cultivator came out from the palace. She glanced at Xiao Hua indifferently and said indifferently, follow I. Yes, thank you, Martial Ant. Xiao Hua bowed and followed the female cultivator into the palace. The 2 female disciples behind him looked at Xiao Hua's tall and thin figure with a puzzled expression. No matter how hard they thought, they could not figure out just what part of Xiao Hua was worthy of Fairy Hong Xia's admiration. Chapter 1656. Xiao Hua followed the female foundation establishment cultivator through the palace gate, then entered a large hall without consulting anyone. Inside the hall, there were many female cultivators dressed in colorful clothes and chattering with each other. Whenever they saw Xiao Hua enter, they would point at him curiously. Xiao Hua had a warm smile on his face and didn't avoid the gazes of others. His indifferent and rather confident gaze swept across the faces of these women. Just like the Heavenly Thunder Palace, the library pavilion was also inside the large hall. As Xiao Hua walked, there were very few female cultivators around him. Occasionally, he would see a few, but they were all foundation establishment cultivators. There were even a few gold core cultivators who walked by indifferently, causing Xiao Hua to respectfully avoid them and salute them. After walking for the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he actually arrived at a garden. This garden was very large, and it was filled with all kinds of strange spiritual herbs and spiritual trees. In the center of this garden, there was a pond about 10 zhang in diameter. There were ripples of blue water in the pond, and it was covered with lotus leaves. In the midst of the dark green, a slender and elegant lotus flower stood in the center of the pond. The female foundation establishment cultivator walked to the edge of the pond and stopped. With a wave of her hand, the sect master's token and Xiao Hua's token were both thrown into the lotus flower. Could it be this lotus flower is the path to the library pavilion? Xiao Hua was stunned. This was something he had never thought of before. Sure enough, not long after the two tokens fell into the lotus flower, a fluctuation of spiritual energy flashed. The entire pond's green color began to tremble, then immediately boiled. At the same time the lotus leaves moved up and down, the entire pond also emitted a roaring sound. From where the lotus flower was to where Xiao Hua was standing, a thin, bright ripple began to appear. The ripple grew larger and wider, and along with the sound of the pond water, the ripple finally parted the water on both sides of the pond, revealing a passage emitting a faint green light in the pond. Go! The female foundation establishment cultivator pointed with her hand and instructed, "You can only walk in the passage, you can't fly." "Thank you, martial ant, this disciple understands." Xiao Hua bowed and walked in. Just as Xiao Hua stepped into the passage, he felt a kind of cold air coming from the surrounding pool water. That cold air was extremely heavy, and it actually made people feel as if there was a mountain-like force pressing down from the pool water. Xiao Hua believed that if there was anything wrong, just the pressure from the pool water on both sides was enough to crush a foundation establishment or even Jindan cultivator's body into meat paste. This pool of water, I'm afraid it's the so-called innate water essence. A thought passed through Xiao Hua's mind. He thought of the water essence that he was looking for. However, he quickly shook his head. How could the Imperial Thunder sect use it in a formation of the Sun Thunder Palace? Even if it was the array protecting the library. In front of the passage was the lotus flower. The lotus flower was floating on the surface of the water, and beneath the water was a slender root. When Xiao Hua arrived in front of it and swept it with his divine sense, he discovered that this root was actually just an illusion, and underneath this illusion was a thin spatial crack. Could it be that the library is in a space? Sure enough, when Xiao Hua's figure fell into the crack, there was a rather large space in front of him. The layout of the space was similar to that of the Sun Thunder Palace. There was a small pavilion, and several middle or late foundation establishment cultivators were sitting cross-legged on the left side of the pavilion. Only one early foundation establishment cultivator was holding Xiao Hua's command token and sect master's command token, standing not far from Xiao Hua with a somewhat peculiar expression. "You're Xiao Hua?" That cultivator asked indifferently. "This disciple is." Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly answered with a salute. "This sect master's command token allows you to go to the libraries of the 8 great thunder palaces. Which ones have you been to?" "All right, martial ant knows. This disciple has been to the Sun Thunder Palace and the Qian Thunder Palace. This Sun Thunder Palace is the 3rd. What are you doing in my Sun Thunder Palace's library?" Reporting to martial ant, this disciple wants to find a suitable foundation establishment cultivation method. So simple. Yes, that's all. The sect master's command token has decreed that you can browse any cultivation method or secret book that is 1 realm higher than you. As for what you read, I do not care. You may go. That cultivator returned the command token and the sect master's command token to Xiao Hua, then pointed to the pavilion behind him and said, "The flowers inside are divided into 9 petals. The fewer petals there are, the shallower your realm is." "Many thanks, martial ant." Xiao Hua cupped his hands in thanks, then walked into the pavilion without consulting anyone. Sure enough, The interior of the pavilion looked like a garden. However, there was only one huge flower and tree. On top of that flower and tree, there were several graceful flowers. Xiao Hua scanned with his divine sense and found flowers with only one petal and two petals. These two flowers most likely contain qi refining and foundation establishment cultivation methods and secret books. Xiao Hua walked in front of one of the flowers and looked at it with rapt attention. Sure enough, there were strong fluctuations of spiritual power between the stamens. Xiao Hua was secretly delighted. He flew up, and his entire body became smaller and smaller. Finally, he turned into the size of a bee and disappeared into the stamen. A month later, Xiao Hua came out of the pavilion with a tired face. The disciple on duty only scanned Xiao Hua with his divine sense, then ignored him. Xiao Hua cupped his hands towards that disciple, then left through the crack he came in from. This time, he didn't leave through the original passage, but directly flew out from the lotus flower. Soon after, Xiao Hua walked from the garden to the main hall. Following his memory, he found a way from the main hall and left Xuanlei Palace, then flew back to Eastern Ridge. After returning to Eastern Ridge, Xiao Hua opened the sealed formation. He didn't have time to check anything, so he only activated the heavenly fire formation. He sat down on the cloud bed in the cave and carefully recalled the cultivation methods he saw in Xuanlei Palace. While memorizing, he also took out a jade slip and recorded his own understanding inside. After another 10 days of bitter cultivation, Xiao Hua finally opened his eyes. His pair of eyes once again stared blankly at the entrance of the immortal's cave. After a long while, his eyes finally regained their luster. Xiao Hua could only hear him talking to himself. Strange, how come this foundation establishment cultivation technique is different from aura refining cultivation technique? The qi refining cultivation method has the same meridians, but the foundation establishment cultivation method seems to have several different meridians. Although there aren't many, they are still different. If only I could use my divine sense to duplicate them. Xiao Hua sighed with emotion. He carefully put away the jade slip that recorded his own understanding. However, he didn't dare to do anything in the library. Since Tai Ching Sec's illusory formation could leave behind images, presumably the library's formation also had the same effect. There was no need for him to try to be clever and end up with a blunder. Since it's the same meridians, the difference in tempering true essence between different cultivation methods can be seen at a glance. However, there's no way to compare the different meridians. Xiao Hua thought to himself, it's really difficult to find a suitable cultivation method among the many cultivation methods. Alas, no wonder the sect master reminded me when he gave me the token. Soon after, Xiao Hua stood up and flew into the herb garden. He spread out his divine sense and walked to several different places. He had secretly placed warning talismans in those places. At this time, it seemed that there were no abnormalities. No one had used the lost token to enter Eastern Ridge's herb garden. I'm afraid I'm thinking too much, Xiao Hua thought. He took care of the weeds and other things in the herb garden. Then, he used a technique to draw in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and poured it into the herb garden. Only then did he return to his immortal's cave. As before, he took the soul-gathering pill and calmly cultivated. To the left of Thunderquake Palace, in a Scarlet Mountain range, there was a deep and serene passage. At the end of the passage was a brightly lit hall. More than a dozen cultivators were leisurely sitting. In front of these cultivators was a small jade table. On the table were several plates of spirit fruits and a jug of wine. The jug wasn't large and seemed to be able to be drunk in 1 or 2 mouthfuls. In the hands of each cultivator was a jade cup. The jade cup was filled with dark green spirit wine. The spirit wine's fragrance assailed the nostrils. These cultivators were sitting in a circle. In the circle, there was a large open space. In the open space, there were several graceful and flirtatious women. They were dancing lightly and gracefully. The entire hall was filled with pleasant music. It was unknown where it came from, but the dancing women's waists were really alluring. The cultivators were none other than Zhen Shikue of Thunderquake Palace's Yanlei Ridge. At this time, Zhen Shikue's face was red and his eyes were slightly red. He looked around at the cultivators and raised his cup. Senior Marshall Brothers, this little brother is not talented. Here's a toast to you all. Hee, Junior Marshall Brother. Although the name of your spring flower wine is vulgar, the taste is excellent. It's a rare spirit wine in our country of Shi. This kind of spirit wine should be slowly tasted. It's somewhat indecent for you to raise your cup again and again like this. An early-stage foundation establishment cultivator smiled and raised his cup. As he spoke, he drank his cup like the other cultivators. Zhen Shikue drank the wine and filled his cup from the small wine pot. He said, "Look at what 17th Senior Marshall Brother said. Our Yanlei Ridge brothers are as close as brothers. This little brother accidentally got such a good wine. Isn't it to share it with you all? I still have some spring flower wine. When you all leave, I'll give each of you a pot." Haha, straightforward. 17th Senior Marshall Brother raised his cup and smiled. Junior Marshall Brother has always been so straightforward. Otherwise, I would have thought that you had something to do. Come, let's toast to Junior Marshall Brother. Zhen Shikue smiled and drank his cup, but then he put the cup on the table and sighed. 17th Senior Marshall Brother, you're wrong. I do have something to do. A Junior Marshall Brother, just say it. We're all Foundation establishment cultivators. There are few things in the Thunderquake sect that we can't do. What else can it be? It's just that I couldn't go to the Feather Immortal Assembly. Seeing others show off at the Feather Immortal Assembly, and when to favor the fairy, I really can't get over it. Zhen Shikue said with a gloomy face. You can leave now. Zhen Weisheng, who was sitting in the middle, heard this and frowned. He waved his hand and said to the women in the middle, "Yes." The women stopped dancing, bowed, and left with smiles on their faces. 4th Senior Marshall Brother, why did you ask them to leave? 17th Senior Marshall Brother asked curiously. Zhen Hao, how can you be so careless? Didn't Junior Marshall Brother say it already? This is about the disciples of the Feather Immortal Assembly and the disciple called Xiaohua. The fewer people, the better. Zhen Weisheng said with a smile. Xiaohua, the disciple who will participate in the Feather Immortal Assembly? Is he very famous? 17th Senior Marshall Brother Zhen Hao asked curiously. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.